me the thumbs up. Okay, good evening, everybody. Our first meeting this evening is a special council meeting. It's a public hearing under the Planning Act. At this time, I'll call this meeting to order. And each councillor, when I call your name, can you say that you are present? Councillor Bagu?
Present, wrong button.
Councillor Beauregard?
Present.
Councillor Bodner?
Present.
Councillor Bruno?
Present.
Councillor Danch?
Present.
Councillor Desmarais?
Present.
Councillor Clayliff?
Present.
Councillor Wells?
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Move on to the confirmation of the public hearing agenda. This is moved by Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Bruno. Does any councillor have a question with regards to the agenda? Seeing none, please raise your hand if you're in favor of accepting the agenda. That's unanimous. With regards to the planning meeting, are there any disclosures of interest? I do have Councillor Wells and Councillor Beauregard. Both have declared a conflict of interest on Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report number 2020-85. Subject public meeting report, proposed amendment to the Downtown Business District Community Improvement Plan. Any other councillors have a conflict? Thank you. We will now move into the public hearing under the Planning Act. Mr. Aquilina, take it away.
Good evening to you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, staff, and those in the virtual world. Purpose of this meeting tonight is in regards to section 17 and 28 of the Planning Act. It is to consider a proposed amendment to the Downtown Business Improvement Area Community Improvement Plan. I'll get into the details of that. So the method of this meeting tonight was administered under section 17 and 22 of the Planning Act and section 3 of Ontario Regulation 543/06. Mr. Mayor, I will briefly go over my Planning and Development Report 2020-85. I will give you the method, the notice of that meeting, the timing of that meeting. I'll give you a brief report on my public meeting report. Then, Mr. Mayor, I'll open it up if there's any member of the public, which I have not received any confirmation of comments, or then any member of council that has any questions of clarification to myself. And then I'll announce when will be something that would be reported back to council for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, so the notice of this meeting tonight was given on June the 11th in the Niagara this week, and it also was placed on our city website. As of now, we have not received any comments from any member of the public. So this application, it's a city-initiated application. It is to consider adding 14 Adelaide as well as 14 Victoria and 21 Adelaide to the downtown community improvement project area. One thing I would like to note, and I thank Councillor Clayliff and Bagu, the draft bylaw notice did not include 176 Elm Street. So the bylaw, the sketch that showed you the additions of those two properties had excluded 176 Main Street, but tonight there is no consideration of approval. So when there is a report for council's consideration, it will include that particular property. So, Mr. Mayor and council, as I mentioned, it will be included, but one of the things that staff will need to do when they do present the recommendation report, any expansion to the community improvement plan project boundary needs to have a look at the rationalization of the needs to do that. Also, the goals of the existing CIP. We need to report on the characteristics of the two different properties that are being added. We have to determine, is the property near the CAP boundary? Is there any potential for conversion of these properties? And is it in need of improvement? We have to demonstrate why we are adding these two particular properties to the downtown CIP area. So that's the job of staff, to report that back to council. It's the rationalization as to why we are doing this. Mr. Mayor, I know we do not have any members of the public that would like to present anything to council, but I do need to read the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the city of Port Colborne before the proposed community improvement plan is adopted and approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the city of Port Colborne to the local planning appeal tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the city of Port Colborne before the proposed community improvement plan is adopted and approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party of the hearing before an appeal of the local planning appeal tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add that person or public body as a party. This time, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned, there's no members of the public that have requested to attend this meeting tonight. I will then open the floor up if any member of council has any questions to myself.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from council? Councillor Danch.
Evening, folks. Dan, I'm looking on my computer here. I think you gave out the addresses backwards. Because I'm looking at 14 Adelaide and 21 Victoria. And I think you said those in reverse, being 21 Adelaide and 14 Victoria. Am I correct, or am I just missing something here?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. That's my error.
Okay.
That's good, because
Those are the two properties that are identified on the schedule that shows you the addition of the properties.
Okay, Councillor
so
Danch?
it was just a verbal mistake on your side then, right? Correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Dan, did you mention another address? Thought it was 176. What street was that?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruno, that was a mention of what was included in 2019 to the downtown CIP, and that was for 176 Elm Street.
Got it. Thank you.
So the two properties to be considered this evening are 14 Adelaide and 21 Victoria Street.
Okay. Any other councillors have a question? Seeing none, next, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would like to So I would like to read the following. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons or public bodies that request notice to the clerk will receive the adoption bylaw for when council does approve it or consider it. Mr. Mayor, I will have the recommendation report at council's next scheduled meeting on July 27th.
Okay. Perfect.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation to council. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. So moving on, I have a mover, Councillor Clayliff, seconded by Councillor Bagu. That Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report number 2020-85, subject Public Meeting Report, proposed amendment to the Downtown Central Business District Community Improvement Plan be received for information. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that is carried unanimously. At this time, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you. This time I'd like to call to order our regular meeting of council 17-20. Good evening and welcome to our virtual council meeting. I'm here in the council chambers with our CIO Scott Louie, Clerk Amber Lapointe, Deputy Clerk Charlotte Madden, and member of the WeeStream team, who are live streaming the meeting for us. I'd like to welcome our 8 city councilors and various city directors who are each attending from their home. City Hall and almost all of our facilities remain closed to the public. Staff have been working with members of our Emergency Operations Center on recovery plans for a safe and gradual reopening once we get the go-ahead from the province of Ontario and our Emergency Operations Center determines that it is safe to open our facilities to staff and members of the public. In the meantime, we will continue to find new ways to deliver services to you. Many of our restaurants are now offering service in their outdoor patios or with takeout and curbside pickup, as well as many of our retail stores around the town. So please patronize those stores and restaurants. And we ask for your patience while we all work together for a safe and gradual return of services. Nickel Beach. So I'm going to start this evening by answering a few questions with regards to social media comments about the city and emails that we've received as a council and that phone calls that we received. The city of Port Colborne took the tact of opening Nickel Beach to anyone from anywhere. And the reason why that is we had a legal opinion is that we cannot discriminate from people entering public space just because of where they live. So senior staff and myself determined that we're not going to be putting the taxpayer dollars at risk with a potential lawsuit. As you know, there's always people looking to sue somebody because of something that somebody did. So in this case, because we may have taken somebody from Hamilton or Simcoe or Dunnville and said, sorry, you can't come, you don't live in Port Colborne or you don't live in Niagara, there are people out there that will try to sue us. We know that. So with these types of lawsuits, you know, this can run into thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is taxpayers' dollars. So based on our legal opinion, that is why our beach is open to anyone that can attend. So we do not discriminate against anybody. So I want to put that to rest that's out there. As of Friday, July 10th, the following operational changes were implemented at Nickel Beach. Port Colborne residents now have seasons passes, and they're available and valid Mondays to Thursdays, excluding Civic Holiday Monday, August the 3rd, and Labor Day Monday, September 7th, and can be purchased for $100 plus HST at the beach gates with proof of residency, such as a driver's license, property bill, hydro, phone, water, etc. Note that the season passes do not guarantee beach access if we are at capacity. If season pass holders attend Nickel Beach Friday to Sunday, they are still required to pay the regular residential fee. Early entry to Nickel Beach will be reserved for Port Colborne residents only on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. Beginning at 10:30 a.m., the gates will open to the general public. A new entry point has been established at the entrance of Lake Road. This will provide additional parking for walk-on beachgoers. Parking is free for Port Colborne residents and $10 for the general public. Accessible parking is available inside the front gates next to the playground area. Staff will direct those who require these accessible spaces. These changes have been implemented for the enjoyment of all beachgoers. I have to say I have been a little disappointed in some of the comments out on social media about our visiting out-of-towners, and I would ask everyone to be respectful of all visitors to Nickel Beach and our great city of Port Colborne. Hydro One announcement. This is huge. Hydro One has announced the completion of the first stage of infrastructure upgrades to improve power reliability to the city of Port Colborne and the surrounding area. A second high voltage transmission line is now being energized. providing an additional and alternate source of power to serve communities and customers in our area. Last summer, Hydro One announced further plans to improve local reliability by investing approximately $30 million to advance the refurbishment of the Port Colborne transmission station from 2025 to 2022. Once in service, the station refurbishment will increase the amount of available power to the Port Colborne area, improving long-term reliability and supporting our economic growth. This collaboration with Hydro One, the City of Port Colborne, and Canadian Niagara Power to upgrade aging infrastructure from the 1950s provides immediate and long-term benefits to our residents and businesses. I do want to thank both Hydro One and Canadian Niagara Power for what they've done regarding this project. Pathstone Mental Health has begun to reopen their off-site walk-in clinics designed to service children and youth up to the age of 18 and their families across Niagara. No referral cost or health card is needed to meet one-on-one with a Pathstone counselor. New protocols require an appointment to be made in advance, either the day of the desired walk-in session or a day in advance by calling 1-800-263-4944. 1-800-263-4944 during business hours. This will ensure physical distancing and cleaning is maintained between appointments. The 5-day-per-week walk-in clinic is located at the Branscombe Centre, 1338 4th Avenue in St. Catharines, and that's been meeting with clients in person for the last few weeks. Starting July 29th, the Port Colborne location at Bridges Community Health Centre, 380 Elm Street, will be open every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And for many months now, we've had some scammers claiming to be from Canada Revenue Agency. The Niagara Regional Police Service has received reports of scam phone calls involving persons claiming to be Canada Revenue Agency workers. This scam involves threatening or coercive language to scare individuals into paying fictitious debt to the Canada Revenue Agency, or they can be arrested. This debt repayment may involve gift cards, wire transfers, or cyber-based currency. The member of the public is then asked about their personal banking information and social insurance number. This is done under the guise of paying a fine instead of an arrest and verifying the potential victim's identity. This scam is further complicated by the use of technology that can cause a phone display to show a local Niagara telephone number or a Niagara Regional police registered telephone number. This is called spoofing. Members of the public are advised to be cautious of such scams and know that the Canada Revenue Agency will not call you and ask for banking information while telling you you're wanted. The Canada Revenue Agency would never negotiate payments for fines over the phone or roadside. Furthermore, the Canada Revenue Agency does not accept e-transfers or wire payments for any fees or services. If you receive a call saying you owe money to the CRA, you can call them directly or check your My Account under the Canada Revenue Agency website online. So remember, if you are getting these calls, I would tell you to hang up right away. The CRA does not call you at home and tell you that you owe money. It just does not happen. This past week, our CAO, Scott Louie, and I met with our new staff sergeant, Rome DeGidio. Rome has been in with the police force for approximately 25 years and comes to us as the staff sergeant of the Grimsby Detachment. Rome's background is with our motorcycle team at the NRP, and he's also an expert on traffic. And since Rome has been here, which has been about a week, we've seen a ride program set up in Port Colborne at Pleasant Beach, and also because our detachment looks after Wainfleet, they had a ride program set up in the Quarry Road area. Rome is also bringing in added traffic controls within the city of Port Colborne that have worked for him in the Grimsby district, and we welcome Rome here. He's a great asset to our city, and we did say thank you to Staff Sergeant Rob LaPlante, who has been promoted as an inspector. Although we'll miss Rob, we wish him great success in his new role, but we really welcome Rome here because of his traffic expertise that he can bring forward with regards to speeding and truck traffic and our ATV and motorcycle issue throughout the city. So he'll be working with us and our partners with regards to bringing in enforcement, and you'll see some big changes coming soon with that. This afternoon I received an email from Richard Daniel, who is our public works superintendent, and basically it says, further to our phone conversation, after meeting with representatives from the MTO last week, Dwight Earhart and his team will be maintaining the section of grass at the northwest corner of Highway 140 and Main Street, and it will include it in their rough grass cutting road allowance program and keep it in an acceptable condition. And the acceptable condition is not what is acceptable to the province or their contractor, it's what is acceptable to the city of Port Colborne. So I want to thank Minister Mulroney, who I wrote in the last number of weeks. She had her department contact our staff directly, had a meeting on site with their regional representative for the Ministry of Transportation. They did have their contractor come in and complete the work that was unfinished, but from now on we are going to be looking after that corner, and we also will be speaking with, through myself and the CAO's office and our staff, with the MTO to bring in better maintenance, I guess if I can say that, Mr. CAO, with regards to MTO properties on the entrances to our city. This was brought to our attention not just by some public members, but also by councillors and myself and our staff driving around and seeing, to be quite honest, a deplorable condition of MTO property at our entranceways to our city. So we've gone out, we're getting this done, and we're going to, again, see some bigger and better things with regards to these types of properties and how they're going to be kept cleaner, the grass will be cut, and as we move into the future, they're going to be looking a lot better for the city of Port Colborne. So with that, that is my report this evening. I just wonder if any councillor had any questions. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, your mayor. With regards to the intersection and grass cutting and maintenance, will that also include the ditches of that area? Because that area is really prone to garbage collection in the ditches. If you go there now, I'm sure you would be able to fill a garbage truck.
Yeah, so we have a meeting tomorrow between the CAO, myself, and our senior staff at Public Works. So those are issues that we're going to be bringing forward for our next meeting with the MTO. So we will certainly bring those up. We really just want to, what we're concerned with is what their contractors are looking after, like on these small little islands and on the roadside in certain areas. How far we go out, it may still be under their contractor, but we will be bringing the garbage issue to them. If it's close to that intersection, because that's where our staff will be, maybe we can say that we'll take over the garbage cleanup of the ditches in ours, but we will certainly bring that forward, Councillor Wells.
Thank you.
I think I had Councillor Bruno.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just to follow up on that trail, that's great news with the MTO and your ability to negotiate with them. I was hoping that the other traffic island, although smaller, still is really cut to the same standard. And that was the one at 58 and Highway 3 at McDonald's and St. John Bosco School. That small island there is really cut to the same unacceptable standard as 140 and 3. And I was wondering if it was too late to add that.
No, actually, we were going to talk about all those properties, specifically those that are at the entrances to our city. So it's not just the Highway 140, but that seemed to be the biggest issue right now. So we will be bringing that intersection as well.
Great. And the only other question I had, when you we're speaking of Nickel Beach and the changes there, and you mentioned the seasonal pass. I was wondering if you know, or if Nicole is out there as to what take up has there been for Port Colborne residents on seasonal passes traditionally, or if you have even 2019 numbers.
Well, I know our 2019 numbers were 14 passes were given out last year, but if Nicole can, she's on the system now, she can tell you about the 2020 number of passes we've sold to date. Nicole?
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, to date, let me just confirm here, 8 seasonal passes have been sold.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Bruno. Oh, and one question I know Councillor Kalaleff had with regards to The list of streets that have been brought forward to the Niagara Regional Police, that list has now been passed on to our new staff sergeant, and it's the same list that we sent to our last staff sergeant, Sergeant LaPlante, and that we also discussed most of those areas, and also concerning Cement Plant Road that Councillor Clayliff was going to ask about. So that's been sent to Staff Sergeant DeGidio, and he will be looking after those. And again, I think you'll find his approach to these are a little bit different than Rob's. Not to fault anybody here, but this is where his expertise falls, and I think you will be seeing some big changes there. So, any further questions, Councillor Bruno?
Sorry, Mayor, I forgot when you brought that up. I know you probably added Barrack Road in that list because it was part of the original, but I did want to ask about. Actually, now I just lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
and yes, that was included as it was in the original email to our last staff sergeant.
Great, thanks.
Oh, Nicole's just updated. After today, it's been 11 season passes purchased for Nickel Beach from Port Colborne residents.
All right. Oh, okay. I just thought of it. It is with regards to the truck route. Barrack Road's been having that problem, and there was going to be signage. When you mentioned the MTO, that's what clicked in. There was going to be a sign looked at being put up at Loyalist Industrial Park so that those transport trucks coming south on 58 would turn and cut through Loyalist as opposed to coming up to Barrack and turning left.
So I'll bring that with the CAO and I tomorrow when we meet over at Public Works. We'll speak to Mr. Lee about that, and we'll have him email you back. I know we asked him about that, but I know it does take time with the MTO, but we'll get an update for you and have Mr. Lee contact you on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Council. So now is Regional Councillor Butters to give the regional report. Councillor Butters, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see everyone here. I'll be brief. Standing committees will be meeting this week. A couple of things that are coming forward that I kind of find interesting, perhaps you will too, is there's some action recommendations coming forward at the Public Health regarding basic income for income security. That's a report that was asked by one of the councillors, I believe from St. Catharines. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. In corporate services, we have additional information coming forward regarding a referral of motion, the direct election of the regional chair. So that's another one that I think will be a very interesting discussion coming up. We did have a special meeting of council that was called on July 8th. And it was in regards to whether or not masks or face coverings should be mandatory in Niagara. And after 4.5 hours of debate, there was a deferral motion put on the floor. And when it came to a vote, it was a 50-50 split down the middle. And Chair Bradley had to break the tie. So that discussion is now postponed till July 23rd. One of the good things that came out of that meeting was that I believe that there was consensus among everyone that when social distancing is not possible, that wearing a face covering is recommended. And people are in that room that day anyway, seem to all embrace that idea. So with the medical experts that we have trying to guide us in this decision, it's not been an easy task for anyone. And I want to just take a quick opportunity to thank the many people who have sent me either emails or private messages or phone calls on both sides of the fence. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to communicate whatever it is, whatever side you're on. I appreciate the efforts that you're making to relay your thoughts and your viewpoints on this. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them back if I can't answer them tonight.
Great, thank you, Councillor Butters. Councillor Beauregard?
Through your worship to Councillor Butters, has public health have they done anything to really make masks more acceptable to to residents across the region?
Well, I think every time Dr. Hergy either is interviewed or has write-ups in the newspaper, he makes it very, very clear that the number one thing that people can do to protect themselves is social distancing and hand washing. And number two is wearing a face covering if you cannot social distance. So he's made that clear over and over and over again. One of the things that did pass at that July 8th meeting is an educational program or piece that was certainly endorsed by everyone. And that was the one part of the motion that did pass, is that, you know, we need a very aggressive campaign to put good information out for the public. So going forward, my hope is that as we go along, and let's face it, the information can change daily almost. It's a real shifting landscape where we started back in March, and you know, even the medical officer of Canada, Dr. Tam, was saying no, she didn't think that they were helpful. Well, that's changed a lot to them saying yes, it is, if they're worn properly, which is also pretty critical. And you still do the first two things. You social distance and you wash your hands. That is the most important thing. So does that help with your question?
Councillor?
Councillor Butters, you kind of got to it, but I was more focusing on public health actually physically getting them out and making them more available to people.
Oh, in terms of supplying them?
Yes.
We haven't got there yet. And I don't know that will happen. That'll be up to council because that's a budgetary item, right?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Danch?
And I'm not sure, I have a regional road question, and I don't know if should I do it now or bring it up in councillor items.
No, you can bring it to Councillor Butters.
All right. Barb, obviously I'm a merchant on Main Street, and I've been talking with a few city staff. Can we get our street cleaned more than once a year? Because this just seems to be the consensus of the region saying like, nope, we're done. We're not coming back. They wash the streets and sidewalks here. And I'm not saying sidewalks, I'm just saying the streets, but I'm thinking it was April when they went through. There's so much stuff laying on the side of the road. I would really like to see the region make an effort and clean Main Street if they could, please.
Okay, I'll leave it with me and I will get back to you, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I could add that to my list of things, Barb. It's again on streets. I remember back there was a time when we did the street sweeping for the region. There was some, Ron might remember, Bill might remember, there was some kind of agreement there that we would do it and they would reimburse us, or they were doing another area where they street swept more often. So I don't know if that can get looked at again. What I wanted to ask you about, though, was in the vein of working with each other. Those traffic islands, since we're on them, across from the operations center, never seem to be maintained to the level the surrounding Lockgate Park is, the surrounding op center. Can't say the Seaway, but that's another grass cutting nightmare. But I'm wondering if we could somehow work the same agreement the mayor has contemplated with the MTO. I mean, we're cutting the grass at the op center and we're cutting the park, and the islands in between the two. Seems to me that while we're already there in operation mode, that bringing that mower across the street and doing the island could be an appropriate time to do it, notwithstanding they've got enough on their plate, but it would all get cut at relatively the same time, and it would look uniform in that intersection with the park. And to a certain degree, it's a gateway when Main Street bridges up. So wondering if we could work with the region again. I know we were doing that with roads. I don't know if that's a Mr. Lee question later on, but if we can do it with snow plowing, I'm hoping we can do it with grass cutting.
I think that's a great idea, Councillor Bruno. I will definitely follow up on that and get back to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions to the regional councillor? Okay, seeing none. Thanks, Barb. Are you at Public Works tomorrow?
No, I'm not. I'm not on Public Works. I'm on the other three.
Oh, okay.
You hold down the fort on the Public Works.
I will.
As
Thank
you
you.
Always do.
Fairly light agenda tomorrow, I think. So thanks, Councillor. Appreciate it, and stay safe.
Okay. Take care.
Madam Clerk, introduction of addendum items. Are there any addendum items this evening?
There are none this evening.
Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. I have Councillor Bagu, Councillor Kalaleff. Any questions with regards to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you, Council. Disclosures of interest. The following councillors have declared a conflict of interest this evening. Councillor Wells, Beauregard, and Danch have declared a conflict of interest on item 3. Councillor Beauregard has also declared a conflict of interest on items 1, 2, and 5. Any other councillor with a conflict of interest? Those are duly noted. Thank you, Council. Adoption of minutes. We have the regular meeting. Oh, I apologize. Councillor Beauregard?
Through your worship, you said 1, 2, and 5 for me. I also have a conflict on item 3.
Item 3 also. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah. So items 1, 2, 3, and 5 for Councillor Beauregard. Well, I did mention that first. Sorry, Councillor, because there was 2 others on item 3. Adoption of minutes. The regular meeting of Council 15-20 held on June 22nd, 2020. Mover is Councillor Beauregard. Seconder is Councillor Desmarais. Any questions with regards to those minutes? Seeing none, please raise your hand. All in favor? Carried unanimously. On to determination of items requiring separate discussion. So this evening we have items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, and 11. All have been pulled for separate discussion, leaving only a couple of items not require separate discussion. I have Councillor Bruno, Councillor Danch to move those. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move on to our items. Item number 1, reconsideration of Planning and Development Department Bylaw Enforcement Division Report 2020-15, subject 48 Kent Street, request of relief of fines. Mover is Councillor Kalaleff. Seconder is Councillor Bodner. Councillor Kalaleff.
Reconsideration of Planning and Development Department Bylaw Enforcement Division Report 2020-15, subject 48 Kent Street, request of relief of fines. I know that council members have been receiving individual requests for reconsideration of this decision. My request tonight was made in order to determine if there's an appetite among council members to revisit this decision.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. There is no debate on this, Council, so I will call the question with regards to a reconsideration, which will put it back on the floor, and then with Councillor Kalaleff can move that forward and debate it. If it is carried, if it's not carried, the reconsideration is not carried, that's the end of it at this point. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So for reconsideration, all those in favor, please raise your hand. For reconsideration. All those opposed to reconsideration, please raise your hand. The motion is defeated. We move on to item number 2, Planning and Development Department Bylaw Enforcement Division, Report 2020-88, subject, proposed discharge of firearms and Bose Bylaw 2020. Mover is Councillor Wells. Seconder is Councillor Bagu. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Mayor. Again, this is in regards to the Planning and Development Department bylaw for the Division Report 2020-88, proposed discharge of firearms, Bose and bylaw 2020. I have a few questions in regards to the report. The Schedule A, for example. Schedule A, I believe, should be expanded out to encompass all of the city boundaries. Right now, it stops at Cedar Bay Road and Shark Road, and then it also stops at Forks Road. So it leaves out those properties that are north of Forks Road and east of Shark Road. I know they're captured on, some sections are captured under the other attachments, but it doesn't give a full picture of the areas that are included in the bylaw. The reason that I bring that up is that I had received some questions in regards to Schedule C, showing that Fire Lane 2 was not hatch marked. So there was some concern by some of the residents on Fire Lane 2 that that section of Fire Lane 2 was not included. But I addressed that with them, saying that they had to refer to Schedule A. But there are some sections in Schedule A that are not in there. So I would ask if that could be expanded out.
Do you want Mrs. Hanson to take these questions one at a time?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Mrs. Hanson, can you take that question, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. We looked at the area of hatching it out, and we picked the urbanized area boundary as that is similar to the zoning bylaw, so that it was having the same boundary lines. But I have no objections to reviewing the boundary areas and expanding if necessary.
Thank you, Sherry. I have two other questions. The one question is the designated minimum size of lot or property in which a firearm could be discharged was 2.02 hectares. Can you, Sherry, this would be to Sherry, could you explain to us how that size of property was determined?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, we were looking at the discharge of a firearm, the size of the shot, and ensuring that if you did discharge, that it would not go over a boundary line. If you, for example, were dealing with resolving a coyote issue, trying to get to your animals, you could still discharge, but then not be able to go over a boundary line.
Councillor?
Okay, I guess that depends on where that coyote is. If he's right on the boundary line and you shoot at him at the boundary line, it could go over. But I was just, I didn't see how that would stop a projectile from going past the boundary line, and whether it was big enough. I just thought you may have had some statistics in regards to, I guess, the range of the shot that would be fired from, but that's okay. The final question I have in regards to it is, why was 150 meters selected as a distance from a dwelling?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, we kept it in conjunction with the bylaw and several other bylaws that we took a look at. It's 500 feet from a building, and it was 1,000 feet from a barn for raising for poultry. But 500 feet is a standardized distance that we just kept with.
Counselor?
Okay. I would have thought that we would have gone with the larger distance to provide more security and safety, but I do have to compliment you, Sherry, on this bylaw and the reconfiguration of it. I think it's very detailed, and it's easily to enforce it. So I look forward to seeing it out in the real life. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And just to remind you, you could make an amendment to increase that distance if you wish. If you want to think about that, I'll go to other speakers first. Seconder of that was Counselor Bagu. Did you have questions, Counselor Bagu?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. To you two, Mrs. Hanson, on page 16 of the report, I just want to make sure I understand what they're saying. With discussion with legal counsel, the city does not have the jurisdiction regarding the tannerite or shooting star regulations. Am I correct?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the city of Port Colborne, or Port Colborne municipal governments in general, can regulate the discharge of a firearm, can regulate fireworks, but we cannot regulate explosives. It's done under a different jurisdiction.
Oh, thank you very much. So further on page 24, on the actual bylaw, the name of a binary explosive. So would that include tannerite? Like what I'm trying to get at, if we can't do it, why do we have binary explosives in our bylaw then?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are setting it up so that a binary substance such as an exploding shooting target is listed in the bylaw that it's prohibited. So it's prohibited by we're prohibiting it by discharging of a firearm. So if you discharge the firearm to the tannerite shockwave, the binary explosive, then that is prohibited. And we need to establish what that is so you know what is prohibited and how you can detonate it.
Counselor?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further this, I studied in this tannerite stuff. I looked it up. I talked to local gun dealers, and this tannerite thing, it can't be ignited unless you have a high-powered rifle, center fire rifle, which is illegal to discharge in the city of Port Colborne and Fort Erie actually already. And even with hitting with a hammer will not ignite it. Hitting it with a 22 caliber rimfire shell will not ignite it. It has to have at least 2,000 feet per second bullet. And right now, it's like we're putting in a bylaw in that we can't enforce anyways. So I just want to put that point in. Why are we putting this tannerite binary stuff when it's totally legal to set it off already?
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Danch.
I got to echo the same as Councillor Baggy was saying there. I'm not a hunter. I do own some firearms, but and I know there's pellet guns and BB guns out there, and there's also pop cans and a little time spent with family members. And care and control is always important. Doesn't matter what you're doing. The tannerite issue, I didn't even know what the heck that was until Harry brought that up a couple months back. I'd never heard of it. I did go on the internet and have a peek at it and stuff like that and said, holy cow, I don't think I want to play with that. But I'm not 100% in favor of the bylaw. It's a little sketchy. I think the dad and the daughter and the young son with the pop cans in their backyard in a safe area, there's nothing wrong with that. I know of a person that shoots some arrows off very close to myself, and it's all done in care and control. And so I won't support the thing The tannerite thing, I am in favor of. Hey, that's a great way to spend your afternoon, guys. Like, have a good time. But getting rid of every little pellet and BB gun in the world. Sometimes Mr. Squirrel needs a boot in the butt to get him off your property. So, as long as you're doing the care and control, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Sherry, will this solve our problem with tannerite?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. The bylaw itself was updated and the tannerite issue is added into the bylaw as requested, but the discharging of the tannerite, the amount, as Councillor Baggio has stated, the amount of power that is needed to set it off, we don't allow anyway. So it's kind of just a cushioning of making sure that it doesn't happen, as well as we've added that into an amendment to the noise bylaw. So if you do explode the tannerite, it's also an issue of our noise bylaw, and we can deal with it that way. But the Niagara Regional Police can handle this without the bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sherry. So if somebody experiences this with their neighbors, what do you suggest they do? Do they call the police first, or do they call me and want me to get a hold of our bylaw people?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar, the best avenue to deal with somebody discharging of a firearm that would set off an exploding shooting target such as tannerite is to call the Niagara Regional Police, and they will investigate. If the Niagara Regional Police need any assistance from bylaw with regards to the bylaw itself and any rules and regulations for setting of a fine, such as if they don't want to issue a fine under the criminal code, they'd like to do a bylaw fine instead, we can do it that way. But the Niagara Regional Police are your best avenue to deal with a discharge of a firearm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Any further questions? Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. If our bylaws were so good, then why has it been happening? I hope that other councillors had an opportunity to take a look at the explosive force of tannerite and what it can do. There are regulations regarding tannerite and the storage of it and how much you can store and have it on your person. The simple fact that it does happen, that needs to be recognized. I think the bylaw itself does that. It recognizes and provides acknowledgement to those parties that fear their safety and their enjoyment of their property has been jeopardized by the use of tannerite within our city.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wells. Any further questions? Councillor Baggio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment. The fine for discharging a center fire rifle is a lot larger than setting off a little piece of tannerite. That's run under the provincial government for the discharge of a center fire rifle.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise their hand. All opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. Council? Item number 3, Planning and Development Department Report 2020-84. Subject stopping up and closing part of Carl Road and sale to 1970065 Ontario Inc. Our mover is Councillor Bodnar. Our seconder is Councillor Desmarais. I'll start off with Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, Dan, maybe taking the lead on this. There's still a question out there of whether the wetlands are actually a provincially significant wetland, or are they just designated? So I'm still getting conflicting stories on this. I wonder whether we could get a definitive answer on it.
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bonner. The wetland to the east and west of Carl Road is a provincially significant wetland.
Okay, Councillor?
Okay, I think that's what we were told the last time, but there seems to be some discrepancy with contacts with the ministry, and they say it's just designated, but I gotta believe staff if they're saying it's provincially significant wetland. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Demaray. Did you have a question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Through you to Dan. Dan, I do have a question from a resident that asks both what Councillor Bodner just asked, but also would like clarification that the land, the actual Carl Road allowance that we're selling has not got a provincially significant wetland on it.
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, that is correct. My information shows that the wetland is to the west and east of the road allowance.
Okay, I thank you for that. Also, members of the public would like to know what the city can do to protect the adjacent wetlands going through to the future, considering we know that they don't own, the city doesn't own them, but what can we do to ensure some kind of protection?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, right now under the provincial regulations and in our zoning bylaw, any development that's within 30 meters of that wetland is protected. If there's any development that's proposed, they're required to do an environmental impact study to demonstrate there will be no concern or conflict with that wetland.
Okay, and who would actually enforce that?
Mr. Aquilina?
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, once an application is made for development, then part of the process, you have the region of Niagara, as well as the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority that reviews and comments and regulates the development adjacent to that wetland.
Okay, so the application would be made to the city and those other authorities would come forward and take care of any impact on the wetland, correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demaray, that is correct.
All right, thank you so much. That's everything I needed to know.
Thank you, Councillor Demaray. Any further questions? No further questions. Please raise your hand. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, Council. We will now proceed with item 4. Chief Administrative Officer Department Report 2020-89, subject Ramey Road name change request. I have Councillor Demaray moving this, and seconder is Councillor Wells. I'll go to Councillor Demaray first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I suppose it would be Dan again. With respect to the name change, I saw in the report that actually Mr. Louie would have written the report, but I saw in the report that it is not recommended that staff move on this right now. And yet, when I look at this and hear how it's impacting this business, and I see the confusion that it does propose, I can't see why it shouldn't be dealt with now rather than waiting till at some point later. And there's a list of other roads that are also causing confusion, and I feel that it's time we took that on and dealt with it. So I would think that this shouldn't be left to stay. I'm not asking that we change the name to the requested one, but I do ask that we take a name change and work with this right now. I kind of split my concerns into two areas. That is one. The other one is the list of names available. they lend themselves very nicely to residential development, but they don't really fit commercial or industrial development. And I'm wondering if we couldn't develop another list of names that could be used to apply to commercial and industrial development as well. So that way we have a nice, robust list and we can go forward to the future. I think the policy makes good sense and I like the way it's written. Just those two things. I'd like to see action on the name changes now, and I'd like to see an additional list of names.
Thank you, Councillor. We were actually speaking about that today in our pre-council meeting. And I know the CAO said he can bring that list forward. So if he wants to make a comment on that.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Desmarais. This report has been a long time in the making. The applicant first appeared before council, I guess a little bit less than a year ago, about August of last year. And at the time I was asked some direct questions by council about how to approach this task. And I did at the time say that I thought there should be a policy in place that governed all of these cases instead of treating them on a case-by-case basis. And that's where we are today. What you have before you is a recommendation to put a policy in place that will last years into the future and can handle changing names of existing roads or creating new roads. So for example, if a developer was to undertake a development that included some interior roads in the development, those names could come from our city provided list. Engineering staff provided that list. That's an appendix to the new policy. And the assumption was that as that list was depleted, as those names were put into use, we could add more names. But I can certainly take back the task of some more suitable names in areas where there's commercial or industrial land uses. This particular area is slated for the CECL, we call it, the servicing of the east side employment lands. And there already is some development taking place there. So I can take that back and bring something forward as a policy amendment or addition. My suggestion, I just want to go in, I understand there's some lobbying going on. I understand that the applicant has spoken to council members about an amendment to the report that would allow a name change in this case. Staff has no objection. The reason that staff recommended maintaining the road name is because this situation does persist in a number of areas. I think in particular, Canal Road turns into Welland, turns into Barber, turns into Canal Road again. There's more than one NEF. There's a lot of NEFs if you look at our neighboring communities like Fort Erie and Wainfleet. But staff feels that undertaking a name change can be very disruptive for the owners of properties on that road, particularly when they're businesses and they have printed material such as business cards and letterhead, dealing with suppliers, couriers, and so on. So that was the reason behind the recommendation to maintain the status quo. Staff would definitely, if directed to do so. So council could break this into segments, approve or discuss and decide whether or not to approve the policy, and then discuss this particular request and how to handle this request directly. Staff would recommend if there is a name change that it's phased in over a long period of time. If it's decided today or at a subsequent council meeting, that 6 or 9 or 12 months be given of notice to the affected property owners so that they can adjust to the new name before it actually goes live, for lack of a better term.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Louie. May I suggest then, Councillor Desmarais, as the CAO says, if council can deal this where you can take the first paragraph, receive it for information, take the second paragraph, adopt the name policy, then add a third paragraph with regards to what you were talking about as far as whether you want to choose a name for that, the two sections of Ramey Road that sit northwest of Highway 140, and then further to that to go back to staff and have them develop a list of street names or road names within the boundaries of Port Colborne that are very similar as the CAO has discussed. So that's probably the best way to deal with this, unless there's any major changes or any amendments to the actual policy. But if you're prepared to accept it, then I would ask that be a third paragraph within the report or within the motion tonight.
I think that would be the right way to do it, is to add that third paragraph. But as far as the name change, doing a name change on Ramey for now would be great. But I'd like to see that name come out of the new list because it is slated for commercial industrial, and none of the names that are on the list really fit that very well.
Okay, so the CIO can bring a new list next meeting. So if you're gonna add an amendment, it would be something to the fact that the CIO goes back and establishes that list, then brings that forward to our next council meeting for council to look at and select a name for those two portions of Ramey Road. Because to be quite honest, there's only, I think, 2 businesses and 1 farm that are on those 2 sections. So it's not a great deal of disruption to people, as opposed to the southeast portion of Ramey Road that's off of 2nd and Concession in Chippewa, where you have probably at least 8 or 10 homes.
Yes.
That can stay as Ramey Road. So if you want to put that amendment in, can you do that?
I do. Yes.
Do you have that, Madam Clerk? Is that all right? You understand what we're looking for?
Yes.
You do? Okay. The seconder to that was Councillor Wells. Is that all right, Councillor Wells, to make that amendment? Would you second that for Councillor Desmarais?
I would second that amendment. Yeah, I have no problems with that. In addition to that, I think the policy route is the best way to go with dealing with these situations. One thing I would like maybe to add to the amendment is that staff consider renaming Ramey Road into 3 different sections. One section be the section from 3rd Concession south to the railroad tracks. That section stands alone with only 1 resident on that property, on that section of road. Then you have the section of road from the railroad tracks to Highway 140. And in the report, it was identified as the train tracks to Highway 3, but that should be 140. And then just leave the Ramey Road section on both sides of 2nd Concession as is. That way there, it eliminates confusion between the section off of 3rd Concession and off of 2nd Concession.
Correct. The CIO has a comment on that?
Okay, yes, through your worship to Councillor Wells, from the appendix, I can't remember if it's B or C, the 4 legs of the road. I think that dead end situation that's created by the railway tracks definitely makes it basically 3 distinct roads. Where it crosses 2nd Concession, obviously it would have the same name, much like a street in the urban area would when it creates an intersection. Staff was looking at that, and I don't know if it's 5 or 10 or 50 years down the road, but there is an idea that eventually that railway crossing could be bridged, and there could be access to all of Ramey Road from Concession 3, 3rd Concession. So we were entertaining something like road name south and road name north, so that drivers could distinguish between which one they were trying to access. So I don't know if that changes the direction that council wants to go. I could also bring that back in the subsequent report that Councillor Desmarais is directing, or that her motion will eventually direct staff to undertake. So give it as an option. Option 1, the same name, north and south, or option 2, 2 distinct names.
Is that all right, Councillor Wells?
I can give you a personal experience of an ambulance driver stopping at my house asking me where Highway 3 intersected Main Street. And they got confused when they were ordered to go to the intersection of Kalali and Highway 3, which was Main Street, and Kalali and Highway on the west side, and Kalali and Highway 3 on the east side. So a directional, addition to a name can still be confusing when that's not given. I think the policy that we have that Scott created or staff created is great. And one of the main thrusts of that policy is to reduce confusion. So by adding north and south, I think if we don't have to add a north and south, if we can clearly distinguish the street with a name of our choice, then I think we reduce the confusion. We control the confusion on those issues. So I would firmly say if the train tracks were overcome, then that name could be changed at that time for the northern section, which would only have one resident. But I think having Ramey Road North, Ramey Road South, and Ramey Avenue, we have 3 locations for someone to go to.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. So regarding the amendment, so we have an amendment on the floor for clause 3. Questions to the amendment? Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship, I would just ask that the clerk maybe read out the motion as potentially amended. I'm kind of confused as to what's been asked now.
Madam Clerk.
I think that was good that you're asking for the clarity. If I could get Councillor Desmarais to clearly state what she wanted again, and if Councillor Wells' amendment is part of that or separate.
Okay, for the amendment would be the paragraph 3 or item 3 on there, and that would be to move forward with a name change for Ramey Road, for the Ramey Road portion in question, coming off of 140, going north to the railroad track. If that was what I was intending, to change that now, and that name be taken off a list yet to be developed that would be more suitable for commercial industrial development, and it would be phased in so that it gives people time to use up whatever letterhead they have or whatever. So just reduce costs.
Okay, and I think with Councillor Wells, what he was getting onto, I think Scott can take that direction back with that list of names for next week and the next meeting it comes back to us, and then we can decide those two ends of Ramey, we can choose it at that time. Is that okay, Councillor Wells?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we get the gist of that. So in essence, Councillor Beauregard, this is going back to staff with regards to the renaming of 2 sections of Ramey Road, to come back to us also with an updated list of names for commercial industrial zones. And I think the other one that you talked about, Councillor Desmarais, was the fact that having staff go out now and start compiling that list of confusion, as Councillor Wells brought forward with regards to the ambulance call I think it was either earlier this year or last year, on Main Street West when they came to Main Street East. So I think the CAO has that, and he can move that forward and have those come to us as time moves on.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all right, Councillor Beauregard?
That works.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just, I like the direction this is going. I'm just not so sure that as long as the coming back of the name for the north-south section, that still north-south could be a possibility. I hear what Councillor Wells is saying. We do have Kalali East and West. We have a lot of that. My real concern is that this sort of, again, partially fixes the north-south situation. And I'm for trying to fix it in one swap. And to the extent that, we own that land along the canal from Third Concession back down towards where it ends with the turnaround circle. But really, if we're about to develop that as an industrial park, I can't help but see that it will get connected. And when you have, if it's Industrial Drive or Progress Road or whatever that is, because I agree with Councillor Desmarais that it should be befitting the ultimate nature of that road. And I would find it hard to think that whether it's the proponent of this right now or whether it's us, that really the ultimate destination should be gotten to via Highway 140 and where Ramey comes out now, as opposed to taking trucks down that third concession in front of those homeowners, trying to make that tight left turn where the bikers and that go. I would think that people will be developing the land closer to the south end, including ourselves, when we service it, because that will be the closest to 140 and the closest services to bring in. Think about phasing it. We'd probably go in front of Lock 1, 2, 3 storage and move that way, and maybe not drive the services all the way down till we started selling lots. So it seems to me that ultimately the commercial industrial nature of that land is going to have a main entrance off 140 and the current Ramey. I just like to keep on the table that being north-south and get it done in one swath. So if that stays in the third alternative to Councillor Demery's motion, I'm happy to proceed with that now with a yes.
Councillor Bruno, I believe it will, because we all understand what Councillor Wells is talking about, but I think what's going to come back will allow us to debate it at that time when that new list comes forward and when council moves the motion as far as naming, whether it's 2 separate names or 1 name. That's up to you guys to debate and vote on. So we're not choosing tonight, but that'll be chosen when that comes back to us in a month or so time. CAO? Yeah, all right. Councillor Beauregard?
Thank you, Your Worship. While we're on the topic of directions to staff regarding this list, 2 points I would like to make. One, I don't see any, category for prominent figures in Port Colborne. I see, nautical and trees and birds and whatnot, but nothing for prominent figures. I would ask that staff maybe look into that and maybe even consult with the Historical Marine and Museum to come up with maybe some other names. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I appreciate what Councillor Beauregard just had to say. I think we're at a time when we're looking at prominent historical figures being taken to task in many ways, and we don't know what the future would be. I don't know that it's wise to step down that road. Possibly we could wrap something around events or bits of history from Port Colborne, but maybe not the person themselves. I would just give that some thought.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One idea I thought of, we want our residents to participate in city stuff. If we can let this out and let the citizens participate, give us some names, I think that'd be terrific. We could have a river cutting, and one day when that little kid's a grandma, she could say, hey, I named that road. I think it might work out really good. We got a new HR person in there right now, and Michelle's relief, and I think it's a good test for her, actually, just to see how well she does.
Okay. And again, Council, I think this, as we move forward with this road name policy, I'm sure there'll be amendments to it as we move along, and different lists can be brought forward. So that's a good suggestion, Councillor Bagu. We could probably have staff adopt that and move forward. Probably be best when the COVID situation is over for people to really get out and look around and kind of formulate a list for us, and we can put it as part of a citizens list and put that as part of the policy moving forward. So I do agree with that. So we're voting on the amendment now. Any further questions on the amendment to send this back to staff, create the new list, have staff work on the problem names throughout the municipality and bring that back? No further questions? So we're going to vote on the amendment, which is to add a clause 3. Please raise your hand. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. So now we have the motion as amended. Any questions with regards to the road name policy itself? Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship, yes, I have one question. When staff went through and asked questions to local residents about their thoughts on this, doing that is not part of this policy. At least I don't think it is from what I've read. I think that should be included. Anytime there's a potential name change, we should get the feedback from residents on the streets. So does CAO Louis have anything to say to that?
Scott?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, I did consider that in some of my conversations with council members, at the risk of giving the public too much say so that you end up with 10 people with 10 different opinions if there's 10 residents on a road and you can't get that consensus. I like the idea of, in order to avoid that but still get the public engagement, I like the idea of maybe shortlisting to, in the case of a name change with residential stakeholders, shortlisting to a list of two or three or four names, and then sort of letting a majority rules process take place as long as the short list of names meets the tests laid out in the policy. For this particular case, these aren't residential properties, and it was really before the policy was in effect, and it seemed like the best way to proceed was to get some input from the owners down there. Now, the applicant does assert correctly that their company, their family, owns 3 of the 6 properties that aren't owned by the government. So 2 of them are the province, and I did not reach out to the province for comments, partly because of the pandemic. And 2 of them are vacant land, and 1 of them is another business. So depending on how you look at it, there's only 1 applicant that supports this name, but another way of looking at it is that half of the properties are owned by the applicant, so I'm not sure if they should have more or an equal amount of say. But to the point of changing road names in the future in the existence of the policy, some kind of public engagement, I think, is going to help to build a consensus and get a buy-in moving forward when a name change is being contemplated.
Okay, Councillor?
Yes, one more question or comment on that. Similar to how we deal with planning matters, typically we would put an ad in the paper to notify residents of something involving the Planning Act. I think something similar in this circumstance, because it would be affecting people quite a bit when there's a name change. You've already addressed what that could be, should be considered maybe in this policy. So moving forward, I would like to see that brought in. But I have another question, and it has to do with fees. What are the fees for these name changes?
Through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, there's no fees, there's no financial implications to the city of a name change other than signs, some sign changes, mapping, which we make our own maps in our GIS department. We would have to go through the exercise of trying to get GPS maps and Google type maps updated. The bulk of the cost is really going to be borne by the individual property owners, especially, as I've said earlier in the meeting, in the case of commercial operators where they have printed material, printed stock, such as letterhead, envelopes, business cards, even in some cases probably lettering on the side of company vehicles where they would have to change the address or the street name component of the address, or be given enough time to use up their existing stock before replacing it with stock that identifies the new name. So for the city, it would be part of our annual sign budget. We allot so much, amount of budget per year for maintaining street signs and road name signs. So it wouldn't be very impactful for the city itself.
Okay. Councillor?
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Seeing no further questions, please raise your hand. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next is item number 5, Corporate Services Department Report 2020-91, Subject, Niagara South Coast Tourism Association. Our mover is Councillor Bagu, and our seconder is Councillor Desmarais. The council appoint the following to the Niagara South Coast Tourism Association Board of Directors: Mayor William C. Steele, Scott Louis, Brian Bowles, and what we're looking for tonight is a councillor. I'll start off with Councillor Bagu as he moved this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I actually went on the website and actually tried to find out who is on the board of directors right now. And even though it's a 2020 update of the website, there's no list of anybody, any person's name whatsoever. Proposal here, I think it's an important committee, but the only thing I don't like is all 4 people part of the board are city employees. I think we should have somebody representing the tourism industry on this board, as is other city committees. We have citizens on the board, and I do have a problem with all city employees on this board.
CAO?
Sure, through your worship, to Councillor Bagu, this is not my report, this is Brian Bowles' report, but due to his new status at the city, it's probably best that I give some of the background. So the South Coast Tourism Association is, about an 8 or 9 year old, maybe a little bit less, 7 or 8 year old association that was founded with Welland, Port Colborne, Fort Erie, Waynfleet, and I can't say for sure, but I think Pelham is covered. Councillor Bodner can probably help me geographically, but I don't think they've ever participated. When this was first kicked off, there was a lot of hoopla, a big kickoff, and it was very much designed to be a membership-driven organization with similar to a Chamber of Commerce type operation, with tourist operators in all of those communities paying for a membership. There were some at the very beginning, but that didn't last very long. And so and I think it was cumbersome on tourism operators, and in Port Colborne, as well as those other municipalities, some tourism operators are also just a business, and they don't necessarily cater to only tourists. So these agencies and organizations were already Chamber of Commerce members and CFIB members, and one more membership, I think, didn't really make sense for those operators. So that slowly faded away. But we did have some public members on the board, members of private businesses, I guess, on the board. What happened is the association is the DMO, the Destination Marketing Organization for South Niagara. It's not just exclusive to Port Colborne, it's all of South Niagara. But over the years, it's sort of fallen into Port Colborne staff's hands. Now that there is an opportunity to sort of breathe new life into that agency because there's some successful grants, there's more tourism focus on South Niagara, there's more of a support from the TPN, which is the Tourism Partnership of Niagara, which is the RTO. Sorry, there's a lot of acronyms. Regional Tourism Operator, that's funded by the province. And I would think also an emphasis on post-COVID recovery. We're ready to get this organization back up and running. And I think if I can put words in the director's mouth, and probably in the mouth of Councillor Bodner moving forward, this is the first of 2 steps. The first step is to get this board back up and running, this agency back up and running without boundaries in Port Colborne, really servicing all of South Niagara. And once we've gotten to that step, formulate it with a board that includes Welland and Fort Erie and Waynfleet if they choose to continue to be stakeholders, and let this be run by either the tourist community or all of the municipalities' economic development officers and tourism officers in partnership with the private sector, or some kind of oversight panel that includes all of the appropriate stakeholders. But this is very much necessary in the short term. You're right, there is a board, but the board has been largely vacated, and it did include some private sector representation, but there's no minutes, there's no meetings, there's no agendas, and really we need to sort of salvage this first before we can get to the stage that you're referring to.
Councillor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Louis. I would be interested in hearing Councillor Bogner's take on this eventually tonight. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Demaray, and then I'll go to Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would actually I was going to ask Councillor Bodner if he would consider sitting on this board again. The work that he's done to date is just really amazing. I remember attending the launch of this whole effort many years back, and Councillor Bodner's done some incredibly heavy lifting over the years, and I would just think that this would be in good hands to leave him on this board if he is so willing. So I would like to nominate him for this position.
Thank you, Councillor Demery. It's funny, that's the name I have written in my blank space here. Councillor Bodner, can you give us your thoughts on this? Then I'll go to Councillor Bruno.
Sure, I thank you very much. I'd be honored to accept that if, to do that. To Councillor Bagu's point, I totally agree that this board needs to include tourism people, and had the CAO got his way and we had a normal budget process, we may actually have a tourism professional person at the city of Port Colborne, but we just didn't quite get there. But yes, I see this, and certainly Mr. Bowles can comment on this as an initial restart of the board of directors. And then as we move along, we add those tourism people once we get a good solid footing again and are able to move forward, because we are recognized by the Tourism Partnership of Niagara as a destination marketing organization. There's money sitting there every year for us that we have turned back, some $28,000 that we could have taken advantage of, and we have once in a while. But I really think that, we've existed, we've hung in there. We may certainly not have been on our game, but that's not to say that a lot of people didn't want us to be. So I think when we get this up and running, again, we'll be able to take advantage of tourism dollars, have tourism people put their input in, and we just have to start here. One thing I would like to say, I'd like to give credit to the board of directors that have been on there, all volunteer people that did a terrific job when this was started. A lot of work was put in by a lot of tourism owners, and a lot of donations made by tourism companies to presentations we made. We did develop that website. We put out 2 glossy magazines. It was very active. Just could not get traction for a number of reasons, mainly due to lack of support for actual paid people to work on projects. It was all volunteers of very busy people that had great input, but just couldn't get going. So this is another chance to get this going. And Port Colborne does, for lack of a better word, own this corporation. So that's why we need to get the board of directors up and running again. The board of directors were there. There just wasn't any main focus to work on. So that's some of my thoughts. I'll answer any other questions if people have them.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Councillor Bruno, Councillor Bagu, would you second Councillor Demery's motion to have Councillor Bodner sit on as City Council?
I'd be very happy to, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just so we know that's on the floor. So unless there's any other nominations, but I'll go to Councillor Bruno first.
Nope, that's okay. I was either going to nominate or second.
Okay,
Councillor
thank
Butler.
you.
Thank you.
So any further questions to this? So we have Councillor Bodner that is willing to sit on this. We have a mover and a seconder that we added his name, we have which is the same mover and a seconder for the motion itself. Councillor Bodner.
Mr. Mayor, I don't feel right voting on this. I think I'll what do I do? Declare a conflict of interest or?
No, you can vote for
Like-
yourself because you're the only candidate, so it doesn't matter. What you're really
Okay,
doing,
okay.
Counselor, is voting for the whole
I'll vote
concept.
first then. Okay.
You're voting for the whole concept of the restart that you spoke about with naming of myself, yourself, the CAO, and our treasurer to this to get it back up and going, and then as Councillor Begg, you spoke about to get the public back involved in this board. So don't worry, you can vote on it. You don't have a conflict. You're the only candidate. You're claimed. Any further questions? Mr. Bowles, I see your face there. Do you have any comments?
Just to echo what's already been said, council can view this as an administrative item for the time being. And once it's up and running, it will be viewed as a new opportunity to introduce tourism in the area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowles. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously, Council. Item number 6, Planning and Development Department Bylaw Enforcement Division Report 2020-90, subject parking and traffic, Pleasant Beach Road. The mover is Councillor Bruno. Seconder is Councillor Wells. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. A lot of hard work over the last couple of weeks by lots of people, probably too many to thank here. I think there's been some great progress made. I really like this report with respect to additional things that could be done to bolster that and put some ideas that now become part of a bylaw or increase the severity of fines. There is one item I wanted to speak to in that list of measures to alleviate the parking and traffic issues on Pleasant Beach Road. We kind of touched on it earlier this evening with the debate surrounding road name change. And that is the first bullet here. In this case, as the CAO mentioned, whenever you're changing lots of individuals' residential addresses, it's a whoppingly big thing, to the extent that by the time you get through the Canada Post procedures and then all those people notifying every one of their friends, relatives, credit card companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it can be pretty daunting. Whilst I take on board the idea that the word beach in Pleasant Beach Road could be a red rag to a bull or get people instantly knowing where to go. In 2020, I think that loses a lot of luster. It's some people getting on social media and say, we're going to, and if it becomes Smith Road or Tulip Lane, that will be the place everybody heads to the beach that week. So I think changing the name in the past was different than changing the name now. I guess I could be convinced to drop the beach word in there and that might not be as much confusion. But I think at the end of the day, the number of people, and let's face it, they're generally young people that are going to congregate to the end of Pleasant Beach Road or whatever it could be named, won't be driven anymore by just the name of the road. It'll be driven by, this is the place to go, social media, phone, text, all of that. And so I would want to pull back on the cost and I think we will be inundated by a lot of residents and businesses on that road. So I'm supportive, but I would like to remove bullet 1 on the renaming of Pleasant Beach Road. That's all I have.
Can you move that as an amendment to remove point number 1 then, Councillor?
Sure.
Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Wells? So we're just, at this point, this is an amendment to remove point 1, which states rename Pleasant Beach Road in accordance with the draft naming policy. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor to remove that, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. With regards to this, I'd also like to echo Councillor Bruno's comments about the hard work that went into this and the serious effort to try to control the situations that are there. The biggest factor I think, which was very evident this year, was the inclusion of the Niagara Regional Police and the enforcement capabilities that were there. I think that demonstrated very significantly that it doesn't matter what signs we put up. It doesn't matter what what we put in our bylaws. It doesn't matter if we can't enforce them, and if we don't enforce them, then they will just be circumvented. So I think the most critical factor in all of this is the enforcement. And that's the only way we can get a strong message out to all those people that are going there or want to go there, is that this area can be accessed, but you have to conform to what we believe and what is socially acceptable. So that's one of the biggest things I think needs to be really emphasized, is the enforcement. We're looking at trying to change behavior, and that's one of the most difficult things to do. And the only way you can do that is with consequences. And the only way you can implement a consequence is actually enforce the behavior you want. So all these items here that have been identified are mainly directed toward modifying the behavior. If we don't enforce them, they will mean nothing, just the same as a name change. So I think that we need to really focus on the enforcement. I don't believe that 3 times a day is enough at certain times. On a rainy day, yeah, 3 times a day may work. On a cold day, 3 times a day may work. But as we've seen in this situation with the pandemic, the influx of people will overcome security, or will overcome those. They will introduce more risk to it. They will violate more of those bylaws and signs and policies that we have in place, because they have no consequence to them. So from my perspective is that we need to really look at that enforcement. So I would ask, yes, we increase the enforcement as necessary, but I think we need to really look at that on a serious note. Couple items that I would like to add to that list, if possible, in the recommendation. One is to
Can I come back to you on those? Can I just have the CAO comment on what you were talking about earlier? If we could break that into 2?
Sure.
Yeah, because I think he's got some items to add for you. Scott?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Wells. I don't disagree with anything that you've said. I think that you're correct that enforcement needs to be there. We can have all the rules in the world, but if we're not actually enforcing them, there's no change in the behavior. Some of what you did say, I concede that Pleasant Beach road allowance is not, it is public, and the public is allowed to access it with limits. The behaviors, criminal behavior is not tolerated, alcohol consumption is not tolerated, parking is tolerated only to the extent that legal parking is prohibited, littering is not tolerated, it's hard to catch someone in the act, speeding is not tolerated, but it's enforced by the Niagara Regional Police. So this summer's steps that we've taken thus far, we have affected change, I think. People can go to the road allowance. The other thing I didn't mention is facilities. There are no public city-provided bathroom facilities. This is not the best place to go to the beach. We've tried getting that word out through the media, through our social media channels, through our own city communications, and through what one council member likes to refer to as social engineering. That's still the stage that we are at. We're trying to change behavior. We want residents and visitors to come to Port Colborne to use Nickel Beach and Centennial Cedar Bay Beach. We are enforcing. We are towing vehicles. We have more than one tow company towing vehicles now that are parked in tow-away zones. There's zero tolerance for parking in tow-away zones. We are writing tickets, as you've said numerous times a day. Our bylaw officers are spread thin. We're covering the entire city. It's busy in a normal year. It's even more busy during the pandemic with extra duties assigned to the bylaw division. We did have a meeting as recently as today. The mayor was included in the meeting with bylaw staff about how we can add resources, how we can add hotspots, how we can add hot, for lack of a better term, times of day, and make sure that we're in the right places at the right time of day. Finance is working on making sure the funding is there for that in existing budget funds. The police have been very cooperative. Having the paid duty police officers there has helped us to change behavior. There's been an ounce of prevention there. The mayor and I have had a check-in phone call with the police staff sergeant every Monday after every weekend, including the Canada Day holiday as well. And this was the first issue we talked to the new staff sergeant about when we were fortunate to meet him on his very second day in Port Colborne, and talk about sort of some of the hot issues in Port Colborne that do require police attention. So we think the enforcement's there. We will try to complement the bylaw presence by adding resources. We think that we have a good handle on the problem. By all accounts, behavior is better. Again, we're not restricting the beach the road allowance that has sand on it completely. We're allowing the public to go there, but you will not be able to park beyond those parking spots that are offered for beachgoers. And this bylaw takes us even a little bit farther, bylaw amendments, and it doubles down on the parking infractions. It adds more areas where parking is not permitted, and it increases the cost of violating those rules, which is the social engineering piece that we're trying to do. I'll sign off, but the last thing that I do want to say is that we think the problem was during the heat wave and during the, I think, opening of the pandemic or the recovery of the pandemic, when people were anxious to get out of their houses, there was a very blurry line, and in fact no line at all, between what was the road allowance and what was Shirkston Shores. We think the public came out to try to access Shirkston Shores from city property. Shirkston Shores has since beefed up their security and brought on their paid duty police officers. So there is that enforcement piece that's making sure that there isn't a backdoor way of accessing Shirkston Shores from city property. And we think that that's hopefully going to be the last piece that we need to enforce the city property issue. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Wells, I'll go back to you.
Yes, thank you, your Mayor, and thanks, Scott. I agree with what you've said. And Shirkston Shores have stepped up to the plate, and by hiring an outside security company called Viking Securities, they made a big change down at Pleasant Beach with turning people away, and that worked very well. Just to add to that list, one of the things I would like to add to the list is to have the Pleasant Beach Road painted with a double line, no passing, down the section from Michener down to the end of the road. Right now, it does have a passing lane or a passing sign, a dotted line, which could encourage people to pass other parties. And as we all know, that road can be congested at times. So I would like to add that to the list. That would be it.
Okay, Councillor. So I do have an amendment moved by Councillor Wells. Councillor Bruno, would you second that? Okay, Councillor Bruno said he will second it as the seconder to the main motion. So dealing with just the amendment, any questions on the amendment about a double line? Councillor Bodnar.
Okay, I think I'll wait to make another amendment then if this is easier to just add.
This is on the floor first. I'll come back to you then?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on the amendment by Councillor Wells? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Wells. Now we'll go to Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everything that's done is quite fine. Renaming of the road was a no-go, I'm sure, from the get-go. And just to reinforce Councillor Wells's no passing thing, I talked to a family today where the son was walking the dog down the road. Young lady decided to squeeze through two cars that were, I guess, illegally parked on the road. The dog was hit, and the only reason the son wasn't hit was his buddy pulled him off the road into the ditch. So this is serious stuff going on down there. It was a police incident report made on that. In this report, we're stopping any parking on Pleasant Beach Road. We never thought they'd park past Mitchener Road. We're also stopping parking on Mitchener Road because we didn't think they're going to walk a kilometer and a half or whatever it is down to the beach, but they are. Now we're taking poor Beach Road and everybody's going to be parking on Beach Road. It's the last small road between Empire and Pleasant Beach Road. I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't include that. I almost hate to do it because when you have no parking on your road in the country and you have a family event or something, you know, mind you, on Beach Road, most of those driveways are really big. Those homes are substantial. But, you know, you get a little overflow, and I wouldn't want to see, you know, just because you're having a family event, somebody gets dinged for parking on the road where, you know, but I can almost guarantee you that if they can't park anyplace else and Beach Road's available, especially when they were loading people into the back of pickup trucks and driving down there, I don't know. I'd like to hear staff's thoughts on that. I just think that that's the next parking spot for people trying to get to Pleasant Beach. So has staff thought of that in the grand scheme of things?
Mrs. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bodnar. We did look at that, and it's quite a hike, but I have no objections to adding that to the restrictions. As you had previously stated, we didn't think they'd park on Mitchener Road, and they have, but Beach Road is a quite the hike down to Pleasant Beach area, and I have no objections to adding that to the list.
Okay.
Councillor Bodnar?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Is there a way to do it that there's no parking from April to what? I don't know. Does it make any sense to put a time frame on it? I don't think we're going to have a big problem in the wintertime or in even late fall as the weather changes, and probably not till the ice is out of the lake in the, you know, in the late spring. Does it make any sense to put a time frame on that?
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar, with the restrictions of prohibition of parking, you can set it at any time, which means 24/7, 365. You can set it so that there is from a time frame of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., that type of stuff. You can also set it through days of the week as well as months of the year. So if it's more of a seasonal issue and you want it so that it is restricted parking for a seasonal period of time, we can add that to the list as well and set it up that way.
Councillor Bodnar?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you to Sherry. So if we do just no parking on Beach Road without alerting the residents and everything, and that's kind of what I was afraid of, is it a big deal to change it back or to readjust times a day on it? Is it just another report coming to council? I know it's staff time and everything, but is it a huge deal to tweak it if we find something we didn't think of?
Ms. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. It's just a few pages of a report, an amendment, and we tweak amendments all the time. If you look at 89-2000, the parking and traffic bylaw, we have hundreds of amendments. It might be valid for this year or next year, but we want to tweak it and change it again. We can always do that. It's not a problem.
Okay. Hearing that, Mr. Mayor, I wonder, I wouldn't mind bringing an amendment forward that we actually put no parking on Beach Road. I just hate to see us have a big problem with parking on there and then it takes us another 2 or 3 weeks to do it. I'd rather no parking. If we get blowback from the residents or if there's seems to be no reason to do it, then we can adjust it back.
Do you want to?
I'd like to be proactive here.
Yeah. Do you want to do the entire length or just a portion of it? Do you think they'll be walking from Empire down to this way? Like, I don't know.
I wouldn't mind doing the whole length and then see where we go from there.
Okay.
I'd just like to be proactive on that. I'll wait to hear from other councillors.
Can I get a
if they've got
second
some
to the
thoughts.
amendment then? Just so we get the floor. Seconder is Councillor Bruno. Sherry, comment?
Yes, I just want clarification that it is in Schedule C2 with the tollway zone, or is you're looking at just restricted parking in Schedule C? So one is a $60 prohibited parking. If it's in C2, it's tollway parking. It's if you pass this, it'll be $160. So just clarifying if it's in the tollway zone or not. So when you're passing that amendment.
Sure. I'd like to start with just no parking. And if we got to slap on tollway after that, we would do it.
Okay. Councillor Bruno on the amendment?
Yes, I was going to bring up the seasonality. I've seen it in Cottage Country where it's done that, and I didn't know whether, I thought where Ron was going would be reflective on the sign. So for example, you can pass this bylaw, but a lot of them I've seen where, you know, the no parking, the icon, but then there's a separate piece that's added underneath that says May 1st to October 1st, because that way you have the flexibility potentially of if it doesn't work out, you don't have to remove the whole sign, you don't have to paint over part of the sign. So I'm just wondering through you to Sherry if the way to do that is to mark it on the sign as a, it's usually like a 2-inch add-on at the bottom of the sign. And secondly, if I could get this in before you answer, Sherry, I think Councillor Bodnar is right in that, you know, you could easily go to Pleasant Beach Road and then on Beach and park there for a while, and it would still be closer than the tail end of Michener down by Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
So people will do the shorter route, but I'm just wondering if I can ask Councillor Bodnar, why wouldn't we still want it, Ron, to also be the $160? I guess I'm thinking if people are reading it on one street, you know, now a group of people say, for $60, we're going to Sherkston. You know, we take the ticket. And I'm just thinking to be uniform, if we're going to tow them on Pleasant, why not tow them on Beach?
Sure.
That's all I have.
Councillor Bodnar.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just thinking of giving the residents a break if they did have that family gathering and one of them got dinged and they, you know, but I'm good with the tollway, keep it consistent. And if we got to readjust, you know, after we'll have to readjust after. So I'm quite fine with keeping it consistent the whole way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sherry, is there anything to comment on Councillor Bruno's remark with regards to how the sign is designed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. Yes, there are tabs just like the tollway tab underneath the no parking sign now. So we can add those similar to when you do a half load restriction and they put the time frames in. We can do that as well. So a tab can be put underneath the no parking towaway with a seasonal time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beauregard?
Thanks, Your Worship. With these recommended measures coming into place, I could see other road accesses being utilized more than they already are. And to be honest, I would like to see these sort of policies potentially expand into other road accesses. Maybe it be consistent. For example, the towaway fines. I would like to hear what the councillors have to say on that, but maybe that can come forward after Director Lee deals with the report regarding road accesses in Ward 4.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you. So any more discussion on the amendment that we do the no parking towaway zone on Beach Road? Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Back to the motion now as amended. Any further questions on this motion? Councillor Bagu.
Are you talking about the rest of the points, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we're back to the main motion as amended.
Okay. Just a couple questions. The 1 hour parking in front of the restaurant Rudders, is that a seasonal restaurant? Is that open all year round?
Right now, we know it's.
And how many parking spots are involved in it?
Right now, I believe it's seasonal. And Mrs. Hanson, how many spots were there when we were there meeting with them?
Mr. Mayor, it's approximately 4 to 6, depending on the size of the vehicle and if you're including the curbside pickup.
Okay.
We did speak to the business owner, Councillor Bagu, so to help him create turnover so people didn't park there all day long. When Mrs. Hanson, myself, the CAO, Mr. Lee met out there, it was he was in agreement with that so he can get some turnover for his restaurant.
Yeah. I have no problem with it, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to see the seasonal sign put on there also. There are, in a cold winter, there are the odd ice fishermen that park down there, and by blocking it off even in the month of February, I don't think is fair for a tollway. And also, Mitchell Road, there is a mailbox there for area residents on Mitchell near Pleasant Beach Road. If we actually put an official sign there, no parking tollway zone, you can't even stop to pick up your mail technically. But I just wonder how my law would address that, Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. If you're actually engaged in loading or unloading, you are not actually parked. So if you stop to open up the mailbox, retrieve the mail, get back into your vehicle and leave, you're not actually parking, you would not be in violation.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'll have to remember that next time I'm downtown. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not knocking any more parking tickets off your record there, Councillor. Councillor, the CAO stated that the website for Rudders states May to October. If council's okay, we'll have Mrs. Hanson speak to them so that we can put that in there so it just doesn't impede with their time zone. So if May to October is fine, is that generally fine with everybody as a friendly amendment? Is that a fine? Okay, looks like it's fine. Mrs. Hanson, you got that? So you can double check with them, just to put the seasonal sign up in front of their place? May to October is what they've asked for. Not asked for, but what they state. Okay, thank you. We'll look after that. Thank you, Councillor Bagu. Any further questions on the motion? Seeing none, please raise your hand. All in favor? Okay, everybody's hands up. That's unanimous. Thank you, Council. Item number 7, Ron Tripp, Acting Chief Administrative Officer for the Regional Municipality of Niagara. Joining the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, I have Councillor Beauregard moving that, seconder Councillor Bagu. I'll move to Councillor Beauregard.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is directed to CAO Louis and maybe yourself. what's the next steps that council can expect on this item?
I'll turn that over to CEO Louis. Mr. Louis.
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, it's going to be hard to put a lot of detail on next steps since we're really at our first steps. So I'll give a little bit of the background and then I'll talk about sort of some of my vision as the non-elected head of the organization, and perhaps the mayor can chime in from the elected side of things. So this started for me in January, February, March, pre-pandemic, when after this, a few months after this passed at the regional level, and we were asked to come on board and support at the local level, we started talking in the CAO group, and that's all the 12 lower tier municipalities, CAOs in Niagara, as well as the regional CAO, or in this case, acting CAO, Mr. Tripp. And the last time we talked about this was March 6th, which was 1 week before, of course, the pandemic and the City Hall closure and the closure of many other facilities. So we were really at our infancy stages at that time. So fast forward to now, July, not a lot has happened in the meantime, other than we do want to join the coalition, and we do want to demonstrate our commitment through our policies and practices and procedures. So in terms of moving forward, my vision, or what I envision for the city as a workplace, so I sort of worry about us as a workplace, and I know the council members worry about us as a community. But I envision some training around diversity and inclusion. We already have a workplace that's becoming more and more diverse in terms of gender and in terms of ethnicity, and that's a good thing. And the city, as a workplace, encourages that and welcomes the opportunity to continue down that path. We're looking at training. We're looking at training for our staff. We're looking at customer service training, which helps us to provide better customer service. We're even considering bringing some training in for council members once we can all gather in the same room again, and having sort of some better path forward for all sort of the public-facing assets of the city. The other thing is policy. We are strong in the policy area. A lot of these grounds, I guess the conditions that are described in the charter of the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities are protected grounds under human rights, and obviously the city does take our commitment to human rights very seriously when it comes to employment, serving customers, interview processes, and recruitment. And so we think we're in a good current state as far as that goes, but we think our improvement can be in how we train our workforce and how we demonstrate that workforce training moving forward in a customer service basis. So I hope that helps. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Louis. Yes. So with regards to page 67 of the report, I think it outlines a number of things that we will be moving forward with regards to the region, who's going to be the driving force, as well as the 12 municipalities working in conjunction with the region on this. But just a few things that I had jotted down here was that, I'm the vice chair of the Niagara Regional Police Services Board, and already we've had Indigenous training that came through last fall, and that's the third set of training they've had for the different boards. So that's, the NRP being under the auspices of the Niagara region. That's training that they've already began a number of years ago. I also feel that we can include a number of our community committees with regards to a number of these issues, and just one is under item 7, support measures to challenge racism and discrimination and promote diversity and equal opportunity in housing. Just in that and what our plan moving forward on the types of housing we want here in Port Colborne, and what we're looking for as far as affordable housing and apartment units for more affordability and things like that. So moving forward, we need to include all these organizations. So with staff, with us as council, with our fellow municipalities and the region, we will be bringing forward a number of these measures as we move along. As CAO Louis says, we are in the infancy of this, but there are a number of supports through this, even further than just the Niagara region. So we will move to do the best we can with these as we move through the really there's 10 things that they've got here, and to get through those 10, we wouldn't be doing those overnight, but we want to do a good progress on them. And sometimes maybe number 7 gets put to the front because we know we could deal with that a lot faster with Councillor Demaray's committee and move things like that forward. So if you can allow us with staff and obviously something that we'll have to bring forward with regards to our council, there may be some type of diversity training that we want to bring in as the CEO stated. So I think moving forward, I do look forward to this, putting together a solid plan with our 12 municipalities in the region and bringing that back to council as reports as we move through this.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor.
Yes. So I think that that's excellent, and I look forward to seeing how we move forward in this. Looking at page 67, what came to my mind is there's a lot here for us to monitor and to be sure that we're being compliant and following the common commitments. So, and having council receive an email from an individual regarding these type of issues, it came to me that maybe having a particular staff be appointed to this type of monitoring of these particular things like race and discrimination, human rights in general, may be something that we should look forward to in the future. Maybe whether that be in a partnership with other municipalities or with the region itself. So that's all I would like to say.
And I think you're correct, Councillor, in the fact that partnerships need to be formed not only within the municipality of Port Colborne, but across the 12 municipalities in the region. But there are also those community groups out there that that look after things like this already, and to bring them on board and partner with us, again, between the region looking after the entire 12 municipalities and each municipality, take the best practices. And again, not everything fits each municipality equally in each area of Niagara. So we can work with each other, as you said, to bring best practices forward. So yeah, we can certainly bring that to the region. I'll work with Councillor Butters regarding that. But I'm sure there are several councillors here with their committees. And I do say Councillor Demaray because she has a huge issue with her committee with regards to housing. That's one of their key thrusts there. So that came off the top of my head because I am on that committee, and we speak about that pretty much every month when we meet. So I do look forward. Thank you, Councillor Beauregard. Next I have Councillor Baggio. You seconded this. Did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a question earlier this afternoon. I emailed our city treasurer asking about the cost of this. There's one report in there about 2019 about adding it to 2020 budget, which I'm not willing to reopen at all. But the city treasurer mentioned 2021 budget, so I'm good with that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And that's where I would see it coming forward as our next budget of 2021. Any further comments by councillors? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you, council. Item number 10, Barclay Walker, Dr. Amanda Bell, and Terry Cease. City of Port Colborne Sidewalk Contract 2020-12, Stanley Street portion. Moved by Councillor Clayliff, seconded by Councillor Wells. Councillor Clayliff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce this correspondence that was received regarding this portion of sidewalk extension through Phase 1 of Westwood Estates. It's come to us as correspondence. There is a group that have submitted a letter, and I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Louis, as COO, and I'd like to ask him to address this item as well as staff as he determines necessary to answer specific questions that this group has regarding the processes that were followed.
Thank you, Councillor Clayliff. Mr. Louis?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Clayliff. So this is in reference to a construction project that city forces were intending to carry out through the use of a concrete contractor. I believe this week I defer to Chris Lee's correction on that, but I think one day this week. So there's a bit of history here, and I can sort of run down some of the history for council. The staff members that would be involved are Dan Aquilina as the Director of Planning and Chris Lee as the Director of Engineering and Operations. I'm pretty sure it would be less Dan and more Chris. So a few years ago, there was a request before council for a different area of the, a different part of the same area of the city where the developer had an existing subdivision agreement with the city that required the developer to put sidewalks in at the developer's own expense. And many of the people who had purchased residences in that area approached the developer and the ward councillors at the time, this is a different term of council, different councillors, asking to, I guess, halt the installation of the sidewalks. And the reason was that they didn't want to lose, even though sidewalks are typically on city property, they didn't want to lose that frontage or have their front yards divided by the sidewalk for whatever reason. Sometimes it was because their car wouldn't fit without hanging over the sidewalk and would they'd likely get a parking ticket for blocking the sidewalk. Sometimes it was because they had installed a sprinkler system, an irrigation system that that went all the way to the curb and would have been damaged when the sidewalk was installed. Sometimes it was just for aesthetic reasons. And ultimately, council decided not to change the subdivision agreement, so it was still required by the developer. During that time, so this is a different area, but very close, same neighborhood. During that time, one of the assertions that was made by the residents was that there's many other areas without sidewalks in the city, as well as in very close proximity to that area. And council of the day directed questions at the engineering department and the planning department as to why there were no sidewalks there and what the future held for those areas that didn't have sidewalks that were already built out. And the answer was that, in my own words, and I'll let the directors chime in if they want to say more, provide more detail. The answer was that in the fullness of time, the city expected to expand the sidewalk network to allow connectivity between areas where there were existing sidewalks, areas where there were proposed new sidewalks or required sidewalks, such as that area that I mentioned earlier, and by filling in the remaining areas with the city's capital budget by just expanding the sidewalk network. One of the council members made a motion at the time that start to take place immediately in this area to provide connectivity between existing sidewalk networks and future sidewalks in phase 3. I don't even know what phase 2 of Westwood. At the time, the motion passed. It was directed to the budget. It was approved in the 2018 capital budget to do these particular sidewalks that are before council today, subject of this correspondence item. It was not completed in 2018 and 2019 just due to workflow, but it was an approved project. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago in council, but the sidewalk contract has been awarded. It's been awarded to a vendor that has been our vendor in the past and is ready to start doing work. So this 2018 approved capital project is finally about to be executed. And that's why I think these residents, these folks have finally become aware of that and have reached out to council to inquire as to the status. And I think, in my own words, offer some objection, not necessarily to the project, but to the fact that the public communication wasn't available early or didn't precede the project early enough. I think the first that some residents found out about that was coming to their homes and seeing locates for services spray painted on their grass in anticipation of the actual construction. And I'll let the Director of Engineering speak to that because I'm not sure what that particular department's normal notification process is. You know, I know that we do different notifications depending on what construction is taking place. So that's the history on how this project got before council. Granted, it wasn't this council. Staff here are always treating the city as if it's a going concern. So projects that are approved under one council and executed under another council are not out of the ordinary. This one, I think, has just attracted a lot of attention because it's been 2.5 years in abeyance, and now it's finally getting to the point where the rubber hits the road. So with the mayor's permission, I'll turn it over to the directors, or he can call on the directors to see if they have anything to add.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. Basically, CAO Louis has sort of given you a quick, short version of the notes and scenarios leading up to this. The contractor currently is looking at trying to come in at the end of the month. Obviously, weather is a critical part of his decisions on when he's going to move in there and do that work, as it was proposed. One side note to that was that in the 2020 budget, council actually had directed staff to include some of the reserve funds that were originally set aside in the phase 1 of the Westwood subdivision. So that those reserve dollars have now been included in the budget overall for the capital works to help offset some of those costs. And it won't all be coming out of the levy. So some of those dollars that will be spent, if this goes forward, would be part of the dollars that the developer had put into the kitty at the time of the development of phase 1 when the sidewalks didn't go in. Specifically at that time, those sidewalks were originally planned for the Clarence Street section of the subdivision. But the current timing on this, and based on the cost of the to do that section on Clarence Street, is a much longer distance, and so staff has moved forward with the recommendation from council previously to try and put sidewalks within the subdivision that gives, as CAO Louis had previously stated, connectivity. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. And the reasoning why Stanley's being done first. And at some point in time, following the motion of what council had said previously, and on budgeting availability and capital dollars being put forward, we would hope at the staff level that we would do the sidewalk on Clarence Street as well once we are able to put that in within a budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Aquilina, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't have nothing to add. I think it was well spoken by Mr. Louis and Mr. Lee.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kalala?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bagu and I have spent the past couple of weeks speaking with people on the street, and I know they did have concerns. I can mention the fact that the sidewalk was moved. It was to be on the south side of the street. It did get moved to the north side, and that was a concern for people. They wondered why that had happened. It was because of the infrastructure, the lights, all of the things that had gone in previously on the south side of the street, plus the connectivity now for phase 2 is on the northern side of the street as well in order to take it through. One thing that Councillor Bagu and I looked at was the fact that we were approached by other people who were very much in favor of this, because as phase 2 goes through here, we're looking at the fact that it now is a thoroughfare to Cement Plant Road. And as you stated earlier, we're increasing enforcement on Cement Plant Road because of the speed of vehicles. I experienced it myself going up there to talk to people. It really is becoming out of hand. It's become a thoroughfare. And we're hoping, we're looking at these sidewalks as being a safety issue. This is the exact same area that we brought forward to you a few weeks ago, asking for a stop sign that got overturned. We now have people coming forward and saying to us, we want a stop sign, speed bumps, or speed reduction. And Councillor Bagu and I said we had taken that forward and it had been defeated by council. And this is what we were told after that defeat was the fact that they would be coming through with sidewalks in a very short period of time. And we went out, and like I said, we have spoken with them. We know that there are very many, in fact, the majority of them on the south side of the street that are, on the north side of the street that are very unhappy with all of this. Therefore, the letter that you all have in your packages to read, we know it's a difficult decision, but we really feel that for safety, and we've had another email or two regarding safety issues that have come forward. Mark and I both saw people walking their children on the streets, and we heard people saying to us that, their children played there and all these different things. But we tried to get through to them, but at that time it was a dead-end street. You could play basketball, you could play on this street. It's a very different subdivision than it was 20 years ago. I don't know if Councillor Baggy can add to that.
I do have Councillor Wells first. If it's
Sorry.
Okay, if it's okay with Councillor Wells, can we allow Councillor Baggy to go? Is that all right, Councillor Wells? Okay, Councillor Baggy.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I echo every comment that Councillor Flaherty has made, but I want to make sure I clarify with Mr. Lee that letters were dropped off in every mailbox of every resident affected by this sidewalk. I just want him to confirm that, please.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Baggy. Yes, every resident in the neighborhood that would be affected, they all had notifications dropped off a few weeks ago, some of them, and they were put in their mailboxes by staff.
Councillor?
And also, Mr. Mayor, sorry, through you again, when our operations gets a definite date, can you please notify Councillor Cleardiff and I, and also the people that have addressed this letter, so they know the exact date it's going to happen, please?
Mr. Lee?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Baggy, and actually the rest of council. Right now, it is scheduled for the last week in July, but we will verify that once we see the whites of the eyes of the contractor, where we know he's coming within the next day or two.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baggy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
Thank you. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Baggy asked the one question I was going to ask, but I have another question for Mr. Lee. If I may, through you, the mayor.
Go ahead.
The question to Chris would be, if we were to delay this, say, another week or 2 weeks, would there be any consequences to that, or any ramifications or anything come out of that to allow the residents that are still objecting to it to put in their input and respond to them?
Mr. Lee?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. The issue is that the contractor that's going to be doing the work will be, he's coming in from out of town, so they're from the Windsor area. So they'll be in town for about 4 weeks. They hope to start next week on some of the repairs in that general neighborhood. So we can push it to the end of his schedule without affecting too much of his workload, so to speak, but much beyond that would be very difficult.
Thanks, Chris.
Councillor Wells? You're set?
I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Clayliff, I see your hand up again.
Yes, please. I can probably answer Councillor Wells on this, because actually we received emails from the majority of the people we have forwarded. A lot of it came in. What we asked them to do was to combine it, and that's what this letter that you received, that was a combination of all of their concerns. The letter that was received in correspondence in our packages, that was put forward as representing the whole neighborhood. So just so you're aware of that piece, it did come in. And I do have to compliment staff. I know that this has been a very difficult decision. People are upset. Like I said, CAO Louis mentioned the fact that even sprinkler systems, things that were done, people didn't realize that these sidewalks were going to go in. Staff talked to us about the possibilities. They're trying to go between sprinklers so that they're not disrupting things. They have offered to run the sidewalk around trees if people want to keep the trees, or whether to cut trees, plant new ones. They're trying to be as accommodating as possible with the neighborhood. But again, I know it's a very difficult issue for everyone in this neighborhood. But I personally feel that it's a safety concern, and I support the sidewalk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clayloff. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to receive, please raise your hand. And that's, any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11, City of Welland, regarding odor and light management control issues from cannabis facilities. We have a mover, Councillor Bodner, and a seconder, Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was really going to bring, this kind of dovetails into something I was going to bring up in my councilor's report, but this is a request from Welland to all the municipalities in Niagara that they are experiencing issues from odor and light through cannabis facilities in their neighborhood in the municipality of Pelham, that's right beside Welland. And while we don't have any of those, we certainly have experienced people that have a license to grow for other people. It's similar, maybe not on the same scale, but we still have problems with people that are growing, that are legally allowed to grow for their own use and grow for a few other people that have a legal license. And I feel we should support this rather than just receive it, because I think we need to actually have a resolution of our own that I'd be happy to craft. There are huge issues to people that are beside someone that is growing their own marijuana on a larger scale than just for them. It's for other people that have a license. These people cannot sit out in their own backyards and enjoy their own decks. And it's just not right. So I'd like us to support this, hoping that Welland then will support us in, in the same thing, maybe like they're doing, dealing through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Anyways, long story short, we should support this, not just receive it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I'll take that as an amendment. Councillor Bodner to support the Welland resolution, and that we notify Welland accordingly. Is that okay, yep. Councillor Desmarais, to do that as an amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions before, as this is amended to support? Any further questions on this piece of business? Okay, so we're not receiving this. We are actually supporting this. All those in favor, please raise their hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Councillors, can we take a 5-minute break? Okay.
Sure.
WeeStream guy, you all set? 5 minutes. All set there? Okay, council, welcome back. We are now on to proclamations. Madam Clerk, I see there are no proclamations this evening. Correct?
Yes, there are none this evening.
There are none? Okay. We have one set of minutes. The Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of March the 3rd, 2020. Moved by Councillor Bodnar, seconded by Councillor Wells. Any question on those minutes? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Next is Councillor's items. Councillor Bagu, we'll start with you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 3 items. I received emails regarding the car speed on Rosemount, where you go down Rosemount past Tennessee Avenue, right where you get the first bends, and then all along the old Surfside restaurant. The speeding there is getting out of hand, and I'd like to have you pass that on to the new sergeant. And also, I know they have had radar set up around Bayview Lane, Lakeshore, which I do appreciate. I've seen it twice actually out there, so it's a good job to keep it up. And if you could just pass on about the Rosemount at the end of Tennessee, that section in there, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it to the sergeant.
Certainly.
Or I appreciate it for the residents.
Yeah, I'll put that on our list that goes to him. Yep, thank you.
The other one I didn't have on my list until just now, but it seems like people not working, I don't think they can afford the proper exhaust pipes on their motorcycles and cars in the city. I feel sorry for them. I hope they get a job pretty soon. But I think we need to pass that on also to the NRP, because usually I sit on my back steps 8 o'clock and I hear cars coming from probably way down near you where you live, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to curtail that somewhat.
Okay, I'll put that down too. Thank you.
And my last concern is regarding the marina. I did have a complaint in there about the parking on the boulevards. Staff has done an excellent job trying to keep them off and clearing up more space for cars. They put signs up now. You can park at H.H. Knoll Park. But the new complaint is with this weather we've been having the last couple of weeks, people are having a hard time hauling their coolers and gear from the parking lot to their boats and back. The buggies are not in use at this time for, I imagine, for the pandemic thing. But I was in a big box store before. They had some wipes there. You wipe your own cart. And I'm just hoping the marina can put something in place. Whether somebody signs a buggy out, it has to bring it right back as soon as they unload their gear. I'd like to have the marina put something into place, and also the fish cleaning station. They want to know how the progress is coming on reinstating that on the docks. And the last for the marina, marina is really popular tonight, is the garbage receptacles. There are no garbage receptacles on the docks proper. They're all at the gates. There was actually probably like 15, 20 altogether, or even more than that. And they feel that staff has to empty the garbage cans out anyways. So why can't the garbage receptacles be on the docks where they had been in the past? So I'd just like an answer on that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Falaz?
Thank you, Mayor Steele. Thank you. I apologize. Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Baggio. I will address the garbage concerns on the docks first. As a part of our operational changes we had planned prior to COVID was the changing of garbage altogether. So we've heard a number of complaints and concerns from individuals indicating they do not want garbage on the docks themselves, and if we could have a more centralized location, which was the intended purpose or the intent for this season, however COVID hit. So what we would like to do is have a barge type system located on the docks where people could go and place their garbage. One of the major concerns that we have, or we have experienced with garbage throughout the docks, is animals on the docks. Raccoons tend to find a way to find those garbage. It also attracts bees throughout the season. And we've heard a number of concerns from boaters. So we wanted to try the opportunity of this barge type system for 2020. So I think staff will be looking towards that. In terms of the buggies, I think we could probably explore some opportunities to provide that service on a self-cleaning, self-return type system not to add additional stresses to staff. And the fish cleaning, I think I would like to explore and maybe consult public health on their opinion when it comes to this. So I'll reference our friends at the EOC for that in terms of the fish cleaning station. Councillor Baggio.
Councillor Baggio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One solution I could think for the raccoons is maybe we'll change the accommodation on the door lock, and maybe they know it already. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since we're on the topic of garbage, I'll start off with my first issue regarding that. On the Friendship Trail on the east side, I would like to see more garbage receptacles there. So to Ms. Halaz, hopefully, if you can jot that down and maybe see what you can do in that regard, because I think on Davis Street, the Friendship Trail where Davis Street and Durham kind of are, and where there has been a lot of garbage there. And not only that, there's been issues regarding dog feces. So maybe like what you do on the promenade with bags being easily acceptable, doggy bags being easily accessible, maybe we can do the same thing there, potentially. So I'm not sure if you have a comment on that at all.
Ms. Laz?
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Baggio.
Beauregard.
Sorry, Beauregard. We would certainly look into that as an opportunity. I'll discuss with our parks crew. Could you individually email me the locations so we're clear on those?
For sure. I'll do that after this.
Thank you.
Good. And then my second issue, and I spoke this with CAO Louis in regards to this. Along Durham Street, if you follow the Friendship Trail and along Durham Street, there has been illegal dumping into where our, I think it's like a water reservoir. I'm not sure what exactly that area is, but it's on the north side of the Friendship Trail and between Elizabeth Street. So along Durham Street, between Elizabeth and Reuter Road. And I'm wondering, this is directed mostly to CAO Louis as well as Director Lee, whether or not we can come up with something to prevent people from driving over the swale and illegally dumping in that area.
Yeah, that's a stormwater management pond, so it does fill up in big events from that whole neighborhood. So, Mr. Louis?
Sure. Through your worship, to Councillor Beauregard, my intention was to add it to the director's meeting agenda, which is tomorrow, and see if there's something we can do with, less, like more natural, like some plantings, or if there's some kind of a natural barrier that can be made that people can't drive through, but it doesn't result in a capital project for the city, and it does offer the protection. But I'll be talking to both recreation, well, for all the directors, but particularly because I have the recreation director and engineer at the same place at the same time. So I'll advance the issue. I think you and I talked on Wednesday or Thursday. I'll advance the issue with them tomorrow.
Okay,
perfect. And my last issue is in regards to 372 Davis Street. So I've spoke with Director Lee and to bylaw regarding enforcement and road markings in the boulevard, along the boulevard where there's no parking. There's been considerable issues with people who are going to Home Hardware and they park in front of the person's driveway because the boulevard's right there, one of the residents' driveways, and there's been times where they weren't able to leave, and this happens regularly. And so what has happened is Home Hardware has put pylons there in the meantime as a temporary measure anyways. And I know bylaw has put signs to prevent like no parking signs to prevent, but that hasn't had the intended effects that we wanted.
Sherry's still here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
You want to take that question with regards to Davis Street and that small area between the house and the apartment building across from Home Hardware? The best way to rectify people's parking there?
Lala has been out several times and have not noted any infractions, but we can keep on it until we do find an infraction. It's hit and miss when the issue happens. So we will do it as a stepped up enforcement and try and resolve the issue. We've already erected signs and have been by there. It's just a matter of catching them at the time.
Is it, Ms. Hanson, is there some type of bump out or something we can put there to actually eliminate that spot that a car can drive over? I don't know what's the best route to go, but can we kind of look at that and get back to the counselor? And because I've been in the area before where people have parked and blocked that lady's driveway, but lately I know with what the counselor said, Home Hardware has been putting pylons out. I mean, there's lots of parking in that area. However, being the time of year it is, with the pandemic, it seems like more people are waiting around as opposed to just running in, getting their stuff and leaving. You have to wait in line now because of the numbers that are allowed in the store there. So is there something you can come back and deal with the two ward councillors to put a finality to this? Because I don't think what we've done so far is actually working.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest maybe talking to Director Chris Lee with regards to some traffic plan and some idea there. We really just enforce the bylaws, putting some fluff in place. I have no problem working with him, but I'm not exactly sure what we would erect there.
Okay. Mr. Lee, I'm sure you followed that conversation. Can you deal with the two ward councillors on this to finally come up with a plan that'll actually work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, definitely. I'll reach out to them tomorrow, and maybe we might do something on a site meeting, but right now my initial thoughts are that we might delineate something with hatch marks or some line painting on the street to designate a no parking area.
Okay. All right. Ward councillors, is that fine with you guys?
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. You're all set, Councillor Beauregard?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'm going to start with apology from the last meeting to Rutter's Restaurant at Pleasant Beach. After looking at the video, in my frustration of doing something down there, I think I alluded to the fact that that Rutter's may have a liquor license and be part of the problem. The fact is they do not have a liquor license, and they are not part of the problem at Pleasant Beach due to alcohol served at that restaurant, as they don't serve at that restaurant. My next issue is through you, Mr. Mayor, to maybe Nicole. Centennial Park, how good are we as we're chasing people from Pleasant Beach and squeezing them out of that road allowance? How well situated are we at Centennial to take that overflow as far as parking and just people generally on the beach and in the park? Do you have a comment on that?
Ms. Salaz?
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Bodner. In terms of operations, I think we've been reacting quite well to the influx of people at Centennial Park. We've enhanced bylaw visits to the area. We've enhanced the amount of operational travel to the area to deal with debris and cleanup. So all in all, I think we're doing well considering the changing environment. I think Sherry could probably speak to any parking infractions and social distancing measures that her staff may have to put in place.
Councillor Bodner?
Thank you. I'll wait to hear from Sherry if she got some comments on it.
Mrs. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. with the influx of people attending beach areas, the Centennial Beach, Cedar Bay Park area, parking lot has been full. But the parking along Vimy Ridge Road was nipped in the bud with regards to giving a few tickets and towing cars, so that's not happening anymore. People are mostly being very respectful of the area, social distancing, physically distancing. We're getting some complaints that are not bylaw related, more trespassing issue and that type. But from a bylaw perspective, the parking and the social distancing and physical distancing hasn't been an issue so far.
Thank you very much.
Councillor, Mr. Louie has something to add?
Sure.
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, in addition to what the two staff have shared, I also have a number of emails to myself, either from Facebook posts or council members or members of the public about some other behavior that is less savory, reports of people, as sort of vulgar as burying dirty diapers in the sand, washing barbecues and whatnot in the water, using areas other than the actual bathroom as the bathroom for presumably reasons of avoiding COVID, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, and even accessing neighboring residents' properties for their own enjoyment. But I have to caution the public and council, and I think I did send this email before the beaches in the city opened. Cedar Bay Centennial has never been a staffed beach. We do have our city parks crews there numerous times per day to maintain the beach and change garbages, clean washrooms, and so on. It's absolutely not in our mandate to secure private property. That is a police responsibility. Trespassing should be reported to the authorities, and whoever's reporting it should get an incident number and make sure that they're holding the police accountable for enforcing that trespassing. The other behaviors that are less savory, we do have a public nuisance bylaw, but unless we're catching someone in the act, because that is not a staffed beach that we have staff at every single day, all day long, unless we're there to actually see those behaviors, we can't issue the ticket that we need for public urination, defecation, public nuisance type bylaw infractions.
Okay, Councillor Bonner?
Thank you. I just want to make sure, and I knew staff were on top of it, but I wanted to hear their perspective on problems there, because I'm getting those same emails. I'm sure Harry is also. I hate to see friends I've known that are senior citizens down there being harassed on their own decks by people that are just taking the area over. So I get that it's a police problem. I just want to make sure we're doing what we need to do to make sure things are working as smooth as they can down there. Just on that same topic, through Mr. Mayor to Chris, if he's still there, I had asked early on for some hash marks that would go across the road from the parking area to the start of the sidewalk there. They're yet to appear, and I just wondered whether they're in the works. If they're not, can we get them in the works? It just is a visual thing for people driving down there.
Okay, Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. Yes, I will talk with operations staff tomorrow. I know they were out late last week tuning up our line painting machine and doing some stop blocks and things of that nature. So we should be able to simply add that to the list of areas to do.
Sure. Okay. And one of the other event, while Mr. Lee's there, we have some stone roads that are certainly, before the rain was a very dry period, that were extremely dusty, and people living on them experience that dust. We have one particular resident that has been diagnosed with a health problem that the dust really affects. Is there any relief? I know we only do it, I think, twice a year. Is there a chance we can do some one-off in front of somebody that has a bona fide health problem that is basically confined inside when any vehicles go down that road or anything? Or is it strictly we bring a truck in and do it twice a year and that's it?
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. You're correct in that we bring a contractor in twice a year to do the application. But that said, I'm aware of the location that you're referencing specifically, right. And we are actually looking at, because of that section of road, and it was a surface treated road previously, and we're going to be doing some repairs on that. We're currently out the pricing to just do that one section. There's about 1,000 feet there. Right. That leads into where the heavy traffic causes the dust for this intersection.
Yeah. Okay. And my last one is what I brought up in Welland's thing, that the cannabis problem that we still have for people that have a license to grow for themselves and a few other people, and the real hardship it puts on the neighbors that are all around them, that are basically have to shut their windows, stay inside during this hot spell. It's totally unacceptable. I know that it isn't our jurisdiction. I got a marijuana file that's taken up a whole drawer in my desk. And I'm just kind of sick and tired of telling the people that, sorry, we can't help you. That isn't right. We should be able to do something. And I think if we lobby the FCM or something, I'm sure there's all kinds of municipalities that have this problem. But I'm telling you, if somebody decided to grow it beside any of us, it is just ruins your life pretty much, when you got to stay inside. So I think I'll maybe work with the clerk and see if we can bring something forward as a motion or something. I really just wanted to highlight because it's very, very frustrating and certainly brought to, forward with this hot weather. So I think that's all I got right now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar, and I do know the area that you're talking about, and I was there, and it was not very pleasant on their back deck. So, 100% I know what you're talking about. Mrs. Hanson and I did have a discussion when I got back from that meeting with those constituents. Sherry, there is some bylaws that Pelham is looking at or starting to adopt. Is that something we can actually look at and then maybe put something together for us? But I think Councillor Bodnar is correct. I mean, FCM is a good way to go. AMO is another way to go, but going after both the federal and provincial governments on this, because it is their jurisdiction, and we're really tight on what we're allowed to do. There's some building issues that we have to deal with, and fence issues, and those types of things that our bylaws and building department can work with. But in essence, these are rules that the federal government put in place that allow all this, and all of a sudden they just pop up. And I truly believe there wasn't a lot of thought put into it. They just wanted to get this out as fast as they could, unfortunately. So, but Sherry, with that, is there something we can get out of Pelham in the next week or two, if they have anything developed yet, and see what we can maybe mold for ourselves with the help of council, and then we can work with Councillor Bodnar and the clerk regarding the other levels of government.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, after our discussion, I reached out to the town of Pelham, and they finally did pass a bylaw. They also have obtained a quite expensive odor machine to try and deal with this smell issue. And I'm looking at the information that they have provided, and I can put something together or have a meeting with you later.
Okay, so Councillor Bodnar, if we can allow us with staff move forward, we'll keep all of council in tune with this, and then if you want to work with the clerk's department on some stuff going forward to FCM, AMO, and the feds, and even the province on this. I think it's the best route to go. But as I said, we know Pelham is doing some things because of their large industrial cannabis operations. we do have one in town, but we also do have many that grow more than just 4 plants, and it's pretty
Yep.
stinky. So if we can move that, and then as we move forward the next month or so, we can bring those forward. Is that all right?
Yep, that's fine.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. A couple things for Mr. Lee. These are items that happened last week during the freak downpouring storm. I had sent you an email today about it, so hopefully you've been able to garner some information. One is at 783 King Street. These folks have been impacted the most severely by the flooding over the last 2 or 3 years, going back into the previous term of council. That was with respect to the blockage in the pipe at Neff Street and the Weir. The rainstorm the other night caused them their 4th flood on their property, some emanating from the rear, which is I know a land issue and a seaway land issue, and a drain that is probably 80 years old that there's not a lot of documentation on. But the major problem, Director Lee, was what came over the curb out front of their home, across the boulevard, up and over the sidewalk. That's what kind of water level was there, and proceeded down their driveway, and has, at latest count, I'll say it's under $10,000, but there's some considerable damage to a on-demand water system and other issues. I'm wondering if you can give me an update on that. I spoke to Mr. Pageant, and he talked about cameras, and he talked about getting back in there. And I know the city went through considerable expense to try and rectify that. What I'm really concerned now is the speed of correcting this and the ability to, and I'll want to speak to the CAO with respect to the insurance side of the business. So just wondering if you could comment on that storm and what might be able to be done again at that Neff Street outfall.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. That being said, I've had a brief discussion with staff this afternoon after the email, and they were saying that the storm sewer was functioning, but they want to verify through additional TV cameraing to see if it is functioning at 100% of its design. They didn't, when they visited the site, they didn't witness any of the flooding that you had mentioned. But that being said, the drainage at the back of the lot is also a problem, was specific to that seaway swale and channel that's back there. As you know, we're working on another drainage swale that the Seaway owns and is responsible for. And I've just had discussions this afternoon with them. And we've added that one to the list for them to have a look at. So that should help the situation a little bit. And hopefully we can determine if there is a problem with the outlet at the Neff Street. As you said, we've spent a considerable amount of funds and time fixing it. We don't know if there's a problem with the blockage at this point in time. The system is functioning, but whether it's at 100%, we have yet to be able to determine that. So we hope to do that over the next day or two, and talking with the operations staff, and we'll see what we come up with.
Thank you, Chris. I had gotten the same answer, so I asked if anybody had photographs, and I guess on call that night was Mike Adet, and he did take pictures. I spoke to him after, Peter, and actually after, it was about 4:30 after I sent you the email. And so he has some pictures showing the washout that's coming through that neighboring old, I don't know if it's a home next door, their driveway. So there's a lot of washout that speaks to it coming from the King Street side, but that would have been through a curb cut. Having said that, looking at the photographs of the damage in the crawl space, I don't think that would have come from the back. Certainly the pool filling in with mud and the water under the fence and into the garage is most definitely, and they contend to have pictures that it did come from the rear. It's the stuff that came down the driveway that got into the old window well. But if I could stay on that subject, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Lee, on another question about Erie Street, the water break there that same night. Through you to the CAO, Mr. Louis, I spoke to you about this today, but one of the concerns is, on the third complaint, the lady, her husband had filed a insurance claim with the city. I called Amber a couple times to get after the adjuster. It was very slow in coming, and you can imagine with a fourth incident, they don't want a 3, 5, 6 month time when they're hearing from the adjuster come back. So I'd ask if you could put the weight of your office behind our insurers and the adjuster to get out there tomorrow if they can. I'll pass in the estimate of damage that they've given me today. But what has to happen there is an adjudication. That'll go through a process, but we just can't have these kind of delays. And I don't know if other counselors have had it, but it's been unreasonably slow pre and post pandemic. So I'm just asking if you could ensure that our adjusters and agencies can get on this tomorrow morning.
Mr. CAO?
Yep, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, certainly will. I'll make sure that I move the wheels of insurance faster, because I'm disappointed to hear about that past experience. This is a outside company that we rely on, that we always assume is giving good service to our residents. So I will take up the case.
Thank you. Chris, back to you. Erie Street, I understand there was a water main break that night. I'm just wondering if you could update on it. Is it a pipe that's aging, or something that when you fix the break, looks like the main or the lateral could last for a while? I really don't have any detail on whether it was a lateral or main, other just than I'd heard that there was a break there.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. Actually, it's an old section of cast iron main on Erie, and it's about approximately 5 meters in from the intersection from Kalali. It's new pipe on Kalali that connects to the old cast iron main that's on Erie. The main actually had a blowout section, and when it blew out, it cracked to the service line that feeds the apartment building across the street. So staff was able to get in there. We had issues with how it was reported because of the storm. The phone system went out and people couldn't get a hold of city staff or the after hours call system. That being said, they actually, through one of the neighbors in the neighborhood, knew somebody who worked in the operations center. That person got a call at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and they got a hold of people, and we were on site within 20 minutes of being called, but we were able to shut things down. But there was some considerable flooding in the neighborhood because we don't know exactly when it broke, and people had a hard time getting through to us. So there's a post-event meeting that's being scheduled already this week, and there's a number of issues that will be addressed specifically with the after hours call out system and how a storm, because as everybody knows, it was a very severe lightning storm that night, and it actually knocked out all of the network connections and phone systems to the operations center. So we weren't functioning until about 9 o'clock in the morning that day.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lee, I don't know if you could comment on, I didn't know there was much cast left, but I'm assuming there is. Is that an area is that on a needs assessment list? Is it near the top, or we've got bigger and greater fish to fry than that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, that's actually in the top 20% of ones that has to be replaced based on its repair history and some of the things that have happened over the last half a dozen years or so.
Thank you. Thanks to your staff for getting out, fighting a bad situation compounded by the communication. Last question, it's Amber, but it might branch off into an area of Ms. Hallis. Seeing today that it's apparent that stage 3 in Ontario may come about for Niagara on the COVID issue a week from this Friday. We won't be in the first group. That Friday, if we get another week of low numbers in Niagara, will spill out into groups of 50 meeting and some other restrictions being lifted. So if things go as they look like they're going on the 24th, the Friday, which will be before our next council meeting, I'm just wondering through you to Amber, could that evolve into this being our last virtual meeting? And if you could speak to the issue of 50 or more, if it begins on that Friday, will we be meeting at council? What would be the situation on committees? And I have one follow-up. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Through the mayor. So no, unfortunately, I do expect us to continue on like this for a while, though there will be some changes as numbers open up. I've always planned for a 25 gathering to make changes to our current meetings. So we will have electronic participation. So right now we're having a full electronic meeting, but we'll go back to electronic participation, which was the original intent. And that means some councillors are present, some are online, some staff are present, some are online, because we still have to adhere to social distancing practices, which means that every councillor can't be up here in the horseshoe. We have to be 6 feet apart. With that in mind, we'll have limited space in council chambers for staff and the audience. I don't believe 50 people will be able to sit in chambers with social distancing in place, but we will still be able to have delegations and some people present. And as well, regarding citizen committees, we will be allowing those to continue only within certain rooms in certain social distancing settings where that can be adhered to.
So there's a chance that committees could come back in a large enough space?
Yes.
Okay. Just if I could, also on then the, is there a concern then about having people come back to City Hall? Is the number 50 in terms of maximum have anything to do with people coming back to work in the building? And secondly, the front counter on the first floor for contact through the front counter. Will any of that be affected by the start of phase 3 if that indeed comes through on the 24th?
Madam Clerk?
Yeah, I'll speak to this, and Scott may want to add to this as well. So we are open for appointment basis where we need to be. We are continuing services. So we are trying to do all contact over the phone, via email, but when we do have to meet in person, appointments are being set up. Safe space has been adhered to at the front counter, but it's limited people. When the 50 comes into play, that doesn't mean our office will be able to open safely. There's still too many people in a small space, so we keep those numbers limited. So we will still have staff at home. I think it'll be for a considerable amount of time. But again, more and more services being offered.
Thank you. And then finally, through you to Ms. Hallis. Nicole, I'm wondering, one of the things that's going to lift on that day, if it comes to fruition, that's still an if, is playground equipment being opened up on that day, given that's what was in the announcement today. And I'm thinking there may be other areas, because your department in so many ways touches people. And so you're always under the hot seat when it comes to next stage. I'm wondering if it does lift on the 24th for something as like playground equipment. Will you guys now, with potentially a week and a half's notice, be able to uncover those items? And secondly, is there any other issues you think you'll be dealing with by the 24th that's been in today's announcement? Or perhaps it doesn't really touch the areas that you're dealing with. I'm just wondering if you could give us an update if you anticipate any changes for stage 3.
Ms. Lev?
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Bruno. In terms of moving to stage 3, we have provided recovery plans to the EOC, which I think get us pretty close to stage 3. So I certainly think that we could see an uncovering of playgrounds. I would suggest it would be done in a prioritized manner. Our most popular playgrounds coming down first, less used playgrounds coming down thereafter. In terms of the gatherings and accessibility, I think we could probably look at looking at permits being issued to individuals to access both pavilions and picnic related areas. Obviously, with messaging surrounding social distancing and disinfection and things like that, I don't think those will be any issues. One of our big concerns and what we'll be looking at is the opening of Valley Health and Wellness Center, and staff continue to work on all levels of the corporation to determine next steps, that being financial, that being enforcement, that being the longevity of COVID and what it may look like to our rentals moving forward.
Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Lowy, I don't know if Amber said you might have something to say, but that's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I think the only thing that I would say is that, as some of the staff here alluded to, we have opening plans for virtually every program, service, and facility at the city. I've shared most of the recreation ones with council because that's where a lot of the public queries and scrutiny is. But we do have plans for the library computers, library books eventually. And although that is governed by the library board, not council. City Hall itself, as we're starting to execute, farmers market, so on. I will remind council that, as I've said in my sort of monthly COVID reports, can open doesn't always mean will open. You know, we might get an announcement that we can open the arena on some certain Saturday in July or August or September, and we might wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to make sure that we have all of the precautions that we can in place. So what opening looks like isn't always a full opening, and it's not always an immediate opening. I do plan to continue the schedule of bringing a COVID update as well as a financial update to the second meeting of each month. So council will have that before them 2 weeks from today.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Danch?
Sorry, I was napping. Got a few things here, and I think I'm just repeating myself, but Main Street at the Weir, where the tracks are, Seaway property, railway property, whatever. You're almost waist high with the grass there. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago. Nothing's been done. So maybe we can send a friendly letter off to tell them to get off and do something there. Same response, Kalali Street Bridge. Let's call it this way. Kalali West, east of the Weir, but like the grass there again, over waist high. There's a marker there that's in the grass. You cannot see it. I'm 6'2". It's up to my waist. Tell Mr. Seaway once again, they need to do something about that. That's definitely their property. It's not a regional thing. I think my next question is for Mr. Lee. I'd asked about some signs around Shamrock there. There was some concerns with the high speeds and some children playing signs. I just wondered if that's been looked into at all, if Chris is still available.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Yes, staff has looked into that, and my understanding is that they called for locates to put some posts in, so it should be happening in the near future.
Okay, so I'll ring your bell once again. Barrack Road, heading towards the to the east. Same thing. Slow it down. Get some traffic signs there. Was anything done there at all, or I've been getting some continuous phone calls from the residents down there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. My understanding is that staff was out on the road patrol, and any signs that were down, they've reinstated or have updated, for lack of a better term, made them new and shiny. I don't know if there would be additional signs required at this time. I think it's a case of people just not adhering to the stuff that's there.
Yeah, it seems to be the trend right now. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'll do my other things through email. So thanks for my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And with regards to your first question about something not being done, yes, it has been done. I sent a letter to the president of the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority. I did get a response through Nancy Giles, and we are setting up a meeting with their Niagara representative to go through their properties here in Port Colborne, and we talked about our displeasure of the way they are keeping their properties, not to our standards, so that will be brought up. But that's already been looked after. It was done actually the day after you brought it up the last time, and it wasn't just because of your comment. We had a number of comments from other councillors and also a large number of the public not happy with the way the Seaway has been carrying that. So the president reached out and we are meeting with their representative.
That's good, because if it was a residential spot, they had bylaw banging on their door. But apparently when you're the federal government, you can just be as slow as you want to be, and it doesn't matter, right? Correct, Bill?
Well, that's true at times, but we sent a very pointed letter and we got action right away. So, Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few items tonight. Some are repeating what other councillors have said. We do seem to have a garbage problem around town. There's trash in a lot of places. It's not clearing up. I know that staff have been out cleaning up on the trail, because I had a resident call and thank staff for the work that they did in taking care of a problem I reported last week. And it's in the same spot that Councillor Beauregard was just talking about. And that spot, I must have made, I'll bet you 10 calls in the last 2 years over that specific spot. So it's a favorite for dumping. There's no question there. But also we're finding in many instances, and it's certainly being Monday is garbage day here in Ward 2, or the southern part of Ward 2. So by Monday night, you can just see all the garbage that, for whatever reason, Mterra did not pick up. And we have garbage all over the streets. There are all kinds of piles of things that are just sitting still at curbside, some that are an absolute mess, and I have no question as to why they weren't picked up. It was very clear. But no matter what, it's summer, it's stinky. You can just imagine the disease that'll spread just from that. Animals are attacking it, so they're picking up whatever from it. It's really a horrendous situation, and I don't know what we can do, but we have to come up with a way to deal with all of this garbage that is lying around, and how we can address it. That's certainly one thing. And again, going to the loud motorbikes, well, we have lots of loud vehicles running around, to the point I've seen 2 trucks, one up off of Chippewa and one just here off of Davis Street with no tailpipes. And they're just super loud, really, really loud. There's no need for that, especially, early in the morning. People are trying to sleep and you got these loud trucks running around. It's crazy. I think the police can probably get on that, and I'm sure that there's some kind of law against it. No matter what, I know that there used to be an environmental control vehicle that would pull vehicles over that were not environmentally fit. And if you're running around with part of an exhaust system, I would think you're not environmentally fit. So maybe we could get that going around here. But loud noises are just out of control. The fireworks, we've got them they're banging all over the place here on the east side, and not on the traditional evenings. So it's anytime during the week, it just doesn't seem to matter. They're letting them off. Some are the ones with colors or actual fireworks. Others are just the bangers. They're just out there to make noise. But no matter what, it's incredibly disruptive. And there doesn't seem to be any repercussion for any of this. That's probably my biggest complaint is that, I mean, we have police, we pay them a lot. We have bylaw people. We have people that are out there and could maybe address them. But for some reason, if they are being addressed, whatever the fine or whatever the penalty is, it's not enough to stop it. So we need to take this on. We have to have a city that is more in our control than it is in all the people who are disruptive. But certainly those things are around and not getting better. There's just a real problem. So I know it's a lot to deal with, but maybe we can put our heads to it and see if there's a way that we can start addressing garbage, loud noise, just generally nuisance problems that exist. And I'm sure they're in all cities and towns, but it seems that they have accelerated here lately. I found that this year is probably worse than the last couple of summers. So possibly we could do something more about that. I would appreciate it if we could. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clayliff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I want to thank you for speaking to the new staff sergeant regarding Cement Plant Road. I'm glad you took that to him. And as I mentioned, when Councillor Bodner and I were spending time over, we actually had a meeting with one of the residents on Clarence Street regarding the same issue, the speeding. Again, it all is enforcement. He told us about a group of unlicensed ATV vehicles riding up the middle of the road on a Sunday, a whole group of them, just like they had every right to be there. And they were complaining bitterly about the speeding. So that's why, again, I look at this whole safety issue. We saw it on Stanley. I had another email from the person who was asking us to put stop signs up that we didn't get. They're asking for us to please go. They're looking for the safety survey to be completed because they're very distressed. The fact that they're saying that the speeding in those two streets has just become, they're just looking for an accident. They said it's going to happen because people are just not abiding by it. I was traveling the speed limit and I had two vehicles pass me going up Clarence Street up through the subdivision. One of them was a Leon's truck and the other one was a car, and they passed me probably going 20 to 40 kilometers over the speed limit, and I was just doing the speed limit. So it's an issue. And again, it's the same thing. I'm not sure if it's because of COVID-19. We're all more aware of the noise. We're more aware of all of these issues that are going on. I do thank you for bringing it to Rome's attention. But I think enforcement is one of our biggest issues that we have facing our city right now. So, and again, that was all I wanted to say on that one. And the other one, I just have one other one, and that is, it's for Mr. Lee. I just wanted to, if you could just give a general overview. You sent me an excellent email. I've had many inquiries about what's going on at the Eagle Marsh Drain, and I've forwarded your email to many people, but I just thought if you could just do a quick update on it, and hopefully this will get out, maybe can get to more people that are interested in what's going on there right now. Oh, and they're asking about the dredging too.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clayliff. As far as the dredging is concerned, as long as the drain flows naturally, we don't have a permit to go in and unplug it, but once we do get storm events, we'll go in and remove that sandbar as best we can with the equipment that's available and obviously with the circumstances of the water. To the gate itself, the repairs are underway on that. The old mechanism that was damaged or on the verge of giving us some grief has been removed. There's a new activation system referred to as a rotor, which is the actual drive system that lowers and raises the gate. That's being installed by the contractor, along with new shafts that run through the rotor system and actually raise the gate up and down as the sensors and as staff requires them to be. So that's ongoing. We hope to have that done. Right now, the contractor's estimating by the end of the week, if everything goes well. So we hope that he can adhere to that timeline. And that being said, the gate should be up and totally functioning within the next few days.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. That's great to hear, and I know people will be happy about it. I did tell them what you said about the dredging, but I just wanted them to hear it from you personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, your worship. Two items. The first one is to carry on with what Ron had been talking about in the discussion in regard to Centennial Cedar Bay Park. One of the items that was raised to me was the fact that there are no signs in that park related to the times of being open. And there are some concerns that some people have had in regards to people swimming in the lake at 11 midnight, a little later than we would like. So I would like to ask Ms. Hazels if we could put any signs up, if we had any signs up that could put the hours that we would expect people to utilize the park, so that we can have a curfew on that, something similar to what takes place at Nickel Beach.
Ms. Laz?
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Wells, we can certainly look into that.
Thank you. My last item, I raised this before. It's in regards to Brookfield Road, and some of the ditching and some of the work that's been going out there. I've received a number of compliments for the operations staff that have been doing the installation of the culverts along 3rd Concession and Miller Road, and very complimentary to the individuals that are doing it, and very complimentary to the quality of work that's being done. So I'd like to pass that on to Mr. Lee. But with regards to Brookfield Road, there is a section. There was a section there between Forks Road, south to a driveway entrance at 398.86, and that portion of the road had been severely damaged, and the damage has even gotten worse as of yesterday when I went past that area and stopped in that area. The damage to the asphalt is actually into the middle of the southbound lane. And there are no signs at this time. I know Mr. Lee had indicated they had inspected the road, saw the damage, know what caused it, and are looking to rectify the situation. But I do think that it's very important that we get some signs out there to warn people. The damage on the road is very significant. There are brick-sized pieces of asphalt that are there. If a motorcycle happened to go down through there, no doubt he would lose control. So I just asked Mr. Lee if he could give me a time frame on when they might be able to put some signs in there, or when the work might be done on that.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Yes, I'd actually had a discussion this afternoon with engineering staff. They have reached out to the operations group, and they will be addressing those loose sections of asphalt that you talked about just moments ago. They're going to be doing some temporary repairs in that, essentially taking out the busted asphalt and putting in some stone. There'll be additional signage going in with that when they do that work. And the engineering group has actually reached out to our asphalt paving contractor, and they'll be doing some base repairs in there, hopefully in the next few weeks, but the temporary repairs will get us through to that time. Then there'll be some new pavement going down, and once those base repairs are completed, and putting the road back into a safe condition. So they're working on that. As of this afternoon, they were trying to sort out the logistics on the timing and the staff to do that. So it should be occurring in the next day or two.
Councillor?
Excellent, Chris. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, moving on to consideration of bylaws. Madam Clerk, there are bylaws this evening. I understand we're going to be breaking these up, correct? Yes. You want me to go through these then, as you guys have presented them to me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So we're going to pull a number of bylaws to vote on them separately because there are some conflicts. So we're going to start with bylaw 6797-47-20 due to Councillor Wells, Beauregard, and Danch's conflict, and vote on this one separately. I have a mover, Councillor Clayliff. Seconder is Councillor Bagu. Any questions on that bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, unanimously. Next, we will vote on bylaw 6798-48-20 separately due to Councillor Beauregard's conflict. I have Councillor Wells moving this, seconder Councillor Bodner. Any questions on that bylaw? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. And now the remaining bylaws, moved by Councillor Danch, seconded by Councillor Bruno.
Sorry, can I just...
Do you want to read those?
Yeah, so one bylaw has been removed tonight, and that's 6799-49-20. Amendments will be made and it'll be brought forward. So the remaining bylaws will be 6796/46/20, and then it goes down to 6800-50-20.
Okay. Duly moved and seconded. Any questions on those bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That's carried unanimously. Again, we thank you for watching tonight's council meeting. The next council meeting will be held on July the 27th. We hope to have as many of you back as possible. We ask you to please stay safe during this time, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.